Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku become Master of Illusion Part 3. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see Part 4, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story Apprentice of Mysterio from 𝐴3. So let's start the video. 𝐵𝐸𝐸 sat in the teacher's meeting room, shifting within her backup body. It was identical to her old one, but its lack of use made its joints stiff and creaking, despite the maintenance she and 𝐴𝐼𝐿 put into it. She would have swapped between her bodies at will, making sure it had seen plenty of use like her original, but she knew better than to risk it. AI transference between bodies without legal permission would have garnered serious consequences, throwing away all the work she had undertaken as an activist in AI rights. But sadly, she could not dwell on the injustices that faced artificially created beings. Right now, something more pressing required her attention. Almost every teacher of UA had gathered in the meeting room with Detective 𝐀𝐦 𝐍𝐴𝐭, the only exceptions being 𝐴𝐼𝐿, who was giving their systems a complete overhaul to purge any potential malware and spy programs. And 13, still recovering in the hospital. Recovery Girl was also not there, currently doing her best to heal the space-themed woman. And what did Midoriya have to say about the villains? 𝐷𝐿, Class 1B's homeroom teacher, asked Nezu, a look of distaste clear on his face. The man had made his distrust of the villain-derived consultant, support item developer quite clear. Unfortunately, Midoriya, while having more experience with the dark web and criminal communications, has been equally unsuccessful in discovering any information about these Tamura Shigaraki, Blood Spider, and Kurogiri people. Nezu admitted. Are we certain he's not holding back information to aid these criminals? 𝐷𝐿 questioned, ignoring the glares sent to him by the other teachers. Midoriya is a morally flexible person, but he also prioritizes Midoriya's safety. Aizawa spoke up. The man had been lucky when he got out of the USJ, his worst injury having been severe blood loss caused by Blood Spider. I highly doubt he was involved in the villain's plan on the attack. You know he's made from Mysterio's brain, right? Deception is his specialty. 𝐷𝐿 growled, only to be silenced when the newest teacher spoke up from his seat. I've spoken with Midoriya constantly over the past year, Toshinori began. In that time he has seen me in my weakest form and was well aware of my time limit, among other secrets that would be profitable to a man with less morals. However, he has not spread this information, or sold it to any party, let alone a villainous one. If we can get back to the topic at hand. Snipe, third-year teacher, spoke up before 𝐷𝐿 could retort. What was the AI able to tell us? 𝐍𝐴𝐭 cleared his throat and looked over the report printed by Midoriya. Well, he was thorough in compiling a detailed psychoanalytical profile on the three, though he admitted that a good chunk of it was speculation and limited due to the circumstances. To summarize, he doesn't think any of them were the brains behind this operation, since Shigaraki was an immature man-child. Kurogiri was submissive and lacked any form of initiative beyond protecting Shigaraki. And Blood Spider quickly grew impatient, waiting for the chance to hurt people. Although he noticed that Blood Spider recognized Midoriya, calling him by an insulting nickname that came from his middle school, Deku. A former classmate, 𝐶EMENTOS, modern literature teacher, speculated, perhaps, but there's no record of anyone with a blood manipulation quirk. 𝐍𝐴𝐭 looked over the notes. However, there is one similarity to a cold case I noticed, but I don't have all the details yet, and I'll need to follow up with young Midoriya for any possible leads. Speaking of Midoriya though, Midnight, the modern hero art teacher, spoke up, unusually somber. Someone leaked that photo of that student to try and set people against us. Do we have any idea about who actually took that photo? Present Mike, English teacher, spoke up, shedding his upbeat persona for a more serious one. No one had a camera out, or a quirk that could function as one. Ectoplasm, math teacher, noted. However, I admit I was distracted by making sure our students were all right to really notice if anyone was taking pictures. The other teachers muttered, agreeing with the mathematics teacher. So how will we address this to the public? The longer we stay silent, the more rumors and slander will appear. 𝐵𝐸𝐸 noted. I will speak with young Midoriya regarding this after our students return to school. Nezu said softly. I already have a few ideas on what path forward we could take, but each one comes with its own risks. I just hope that things don't continue to deteriorate. Midoriya hovered in the now empty studio. He felt a strong urge to follow his student home. He had considered doing it in the past, but decided it was unnecessary at the time, not to mention creepy. However, with the leak of Midoriya's choice in persona, Midoriya felt that some extra caution would be needed to prevent harassment. He knew that Midoriya didn't like it when he did such things. But Midoriya was never one to allow things to be beyond his control if he could help it. However, before he could send out some cloaked mini-drones, he heard a clatter. The AI sighed audibly. Look, they were just here to hang out. It's nothing you need be concerned with. The drone froze in its position. Sitting upon an empty table was a centipede, a massive, evil-looking centipede with an unnatural glow to its eyes. The sight of it made the AI go very still. Few things could make him afraid, but this was one of them. 𝐬𝐸, in the time he had been teaching Midoriya, had told his successor many stories of the man he was based on. His time growing up in Riverside, California, meeting his own idol, Ray Bradhouse, and surpassing him. Joining up with the various incarnations of the Sinister Six, using his special effects mastery to convince J. Jonah Jameson that he was in hell being tortured by a devil shaped like Spider-Man. Being hired by Harry Osborn to plant false memories of Gwen Stacy having a relationship with Norman Osborn and her friend, Mary Jane Watson, shattering a mystical tablet that made him a virtual god, only for Spider-Man to team up with 3 of his counterparts from other worlds to defeat him. Discovering a world where Spider-Man had died and a new one, a young boy, took up the mantle in his place. The time the Sinister Six nearly destroyed the world until his archenemy Spider-Man convinced him to turn on Octavius. Observing Daniel Beckhart and Francis Clum, 2 people who had taken up his mantle, fight over the right to bear it, only to both be bested by Spider-Man and a third party. Learning that he was pivotal in causing an apocalyptic bad future by tricking Wolverine into slaughtering the X-Men, and the villains who wanted him to recreate it in spite of his own wishes, accidentally becoming a bearer of the dark god Cyttorak's power at the cost of his android daughter's life. Horrible deeds, some he regretted with the benefit of hindsight and a clearer head, but all of them he admitted to his protege when the boy asked. But one story he had never told his apprentice was the one about the first time he was dying of cancer, when he grew so desperate for a theatrical end he manipulated Daredevil, real name Matt Murdock, in a gambit to make the man without fear kill him. A scheme that had failed horribly, with Daredevil deviating at the most important moment, leaving him free to mock him, call him a hack and a human Xerox machine. The man deconstructed his grand swan song, calling it little more than a cliché-filled B-movie plot that had been done before, and by better men than him. So he left Beck on the ground, alive, so broken that the illusionist had taken a gun to his head, only acknowledging how he was copying Kraven's own suicide. Of course, people had assumed that Beck faked his death and gone into hiding. Not unreasonable, he had successfully pulled off that act several times prior. So naturally, Midoriya had asked about the circumstances around his time fighting Daredevil. But 𝐬𝐸 would always change the subject. He'd always pretend he didn't hear it, or plant a false text message from the boy's mother to get him to leave. Not because he was ashamed of the story itself. He had long since accepted that he had been a horrible person in life. The acts he committed to try to drive Matt Murdock to madness were, honestly, just another pound of flesh on the scale of his sins, with the suicide being a cherry on top. No, he didn't talk about it because it wasn't a trick. He had indeed been that depressed and broken, so he just tried to end it all. The act had ensured his damnation, though at that point it had been little more than a rubber stamp of confirmation. So naturally, he had gone to hell. And when he arrived, he found himself recruited by a new boss. A boss that, even though he was long gone, Beck and 𝐬𝐸 feared defying again. The centipede crawled off the table, joining up with 1,000 more identical creatures that seemed to morph and fuse together, becoming a zombified figure in a hood, trench coat, and bandages. "Hello, Beck," the centipede hissed out, its voice echoed several times over by its fellow anthropods. Impossible, you died." 𝐬𝐸 backed away, feeling terror on par with the attack on the USJ. "Oh, Kindred is dead, unfortunately. He was quite the entertaining pawn to torment Spider-Man. But he was just the middle manager. You can think of me as the CEO." The legion of hellish centipedes hissed out. "This form is simply to make sure you take this conversation seriously." Then, your 𝐬𝐸 floated backwards, the Ludwig avatar fearful and shaking. "Mephisto, a demon confirmed. But Quentin Beck cleared his debt to you." The AI protested. "And even if he hasn't, he should already be in your realm. I'm just a copy of Beck. I'm not actually as fascinating as it is to discuss the philosophy of mind-born AIs and if they count as their own being with their own souls. That's not why I'm here." The demon dryly interrupted. "We need to talk about your apprentice and the man who wants to kill him. The Shigaraki punk. What about him?" 𝐬𝐸 asked. "And since when did you care about what humans do outside of the deals you make with them?" "I don't, normally," Mephisto admitted. "But that mortal is in service of someone dangerously powerful. And I cannot risk exposing myself to his master or any other heroes that have appeared." That gave 𝐬𝐸 a pause. From what he saw of the hand-covered villain, he was an immature brat who expected things to go exactly as he planned, only to throw tantrums at the slightest hurdle sent his way. Not the kind of person who would plan out an invasion with that amount of precision and skill. So naturally, 𝐬𝐸 had figured that the young man was little more than a pawn for another, more dangerous person, a theory that was shared with All Might and the detective in charge of the case. But to hear that even one of the most dangerous demons of the afterlife was concerned. "How powerful are we talking about?" 𝐬𝐸 asked, dreading the answer. The mass of centipedes chattered and clicked amongst themselves, itself seemingly debating how much it should tell the AI before it eventually spoke up again. Your society knows him as a boogeyman from the dawn of quirks, a mythical thief whispered about in the dark underbelly of society, who can take away quirks and give them out at will. Subireya's hologram had nodded. He, like many other villains from the early days of quirks, had heard the rumors of the Shadow King of Japan, a villain who had amassed enough power that it took the entire JSDF, the Avengers led by Thor, the X-Men led by Wolverine, and several vigilante groups to take his forces down. It was an admirable fight on the Shadow King's part, but no body of that man had been discovered. However, it was quite clear from reports that the non-quirked heroes held an advantage, as shown when he tried to take the power of Wolverine, the Hulk, Doctor Strange, and Thor at different times, and received only retaliatory strikes for his efforts. In the end, the man was considered little more than a wannabe Doctor Doom, a threat that had a lot of power, but had already been dealt with. I'm assuming he took a quirk that made him long-lived, and he's behind the USJ attack? Subireya asked, mostly in a rhetorical sense. The demon nodded, but Subireya still had a question. But so what if he can take quirks? If he can't take the powers of mutants, non-humans, magic users, or altereds, he shouldn't be a threat to you, so why are you so concerned? Because ever since he battled that all-might mortal, he's undergone treatments to improve himself, growing stronger not just in physical power, but in capability. So now, he may only be able to take quirks, but now he can copy non-quirk powers. Midoriya approached Yue Hai. As he had feared, some people on the train he had taken to school were eyeing him in suspicion. Though he wasn't the only green-haired person the people around him treated with suspicion, Midoriya couldn't help but feel guilty. If he had just dodged the Namu's attack, he could have avoided causing such a huge uproar among people, and now his peers were put into the crosshairs for it. Still lost in his worries, Midoriya entered the school. As he walked down the hallways, he saw that several people, none of them a part of his class, were watching him in suspicion and fear. I don't know how much longer I can take this. Midoriya sidestepped a large student who gave him a dirty look, but his distracted thoughts caused him to run into another student. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's fine, Midoriya. Midoriya looked at the speaker, Tsunotori. It was the American girl from his entrance exam, wearing a hero class uniform and watching him with concern. I didn't hurt you or anything, did I? No, she said, her Japanese better than it had been the last time he saw her, but she avoided his gaze. Listen, you should be careful around 1B. Some of my classmates have been getting riled up by our teacher because of the Mysterio picture. Midoriya asked. Tsunotori did a so-so gesture. Somewhat, but I think it's mostly because it's been barely into the school year, and already your class has media attention on it. Really? I thought everyone was going nuts over that picture. Midoriya asked. Some are, but my class doesn't really care besides the extra attention, and I don't get why people are up in arms over the photo. Tsunotori rolled her eyes. No offense, but I thought you would be upset by that, Midoriya admitted. But when she looked at him confused, he realized that he should probably clarify. Because you're American, like the original Mysterio was, I suppose, but he was based in New York. I'm a Texan, outside of his state. Most people barely give Quentin Beck or his successors a second thought outside of when they talk about the Sinister Six. Tsunotori pointed out. It's weird, but Japan has been the most vocal about Mysterio in general. Midoriya hummed. Yeah, I don't know why people obsess over him, either. Really? Tsunotori stared at him, her expression one of analyzing. Before Midoriya could ask what was wrong, she stopped. Here's my classroom. Have a good day. You too, Tsunotori, Midoriya said with a wave and smile, the latter of which she nervously returned before going inside. Midoriya made it to his classroom, where almost everyone was gathered around, chatting excitedly to a girl with light-colored skin, caramel-colored hair, and green eyes, but no body beneath her neck. Hey Toru, enjoying the mask? The girl, Toru, looked over, smiling brightly, happy that people could see that she was doing so. I love it. Dang, that looks so much like real skin, Anjiro commented, poking Toru's cheek. It even feels like the real thing too. Well, yeah, if it looked fake it wouldn't be a very good disguise, would it? Midoriya pointed out, only to be tackled by Toru, who gave him a big hug. Achako glared, but her joy for Toru outweighed an anger she felt, so instead she worked to revive Midoriya from his affection-induced coma. Some small talk was made, people updating each other on what they did during the impromptu break. Sympathy was given to Midoriya and Sue, two people harassed over the photograph, all of which ended when Aizawa entered. He looked a bit paler than normal, but otherwise he was as he always was. The class immediately fell silent, earning a grunt of approval from him. Then, he made an announcement that surprised a good chunk of the class. We're still doing the sports festival? Kaminari asked. But shouldn't it be cancelled because of the USJ? Gyro asked. That would be the most rational thing to do. But the board of directors and HPSC want to prove that everything's fine and reassure people, so they're going ahead with it. Aizawa grumbled, disapproval clear in his voice. However, as a precaution, we'll be doubling the security and calling in any off-duty pro heroes to patrol the stadium grounds. What's more, the sports festival is important for your career as heroes. Aizawa continued. This is a chance to be seen and to make an impact on the hero community at large. It will be seen by every pro hero in the country, and thus will be instrumental in attracting attention for a pro hero looking to gain a sidekick. I dunno, Zero muttered. Still seems kinda soon, come on guys. Everyone turned to Ochako, shocked by the intense aura the normally bubbly girl gave off. We took on a horde of villains. We can handle a few sporting events. I'm both scared and attracted right now. Midoriya thought to himself. Any questions regarding the sports festival? Ieyasu asked, unperturbed by the girl's eagerness. Are we allowed to bring in support items? Ieyasu asked with his hand high in the air. And immediately several people turned to Midoriya with a knowing look, which he nodded, blushing, knowing exactly what they were thinking. Yes, each hero student may bring in one non-essential support item, Aizawa calmly explained, and when he saw Midoriya raise his hand, he growled. No, entire costumes do not count. The support item can only perform one non-essential function, so I recommend you think carefully about which one you choose to bring in. Actually, I was going to ask what would count as non-essential support gear, Midoriya explained, to which Aizawa quietly hummed before answering. The UA Sports Festival will allow hero students to bring in only items that can do something you're capable of better. Seeing several confused stares, Aizawa sighed. For example, if Bakugo was to submit his costume's gauntlets for the sports festival, they'd be rejected because of their capability to store his sweat, which Bakugo cannot do on his own, to say nothing of how destructive they are. However, if he brought in gloves that helped him with aiming, or focusing the blasts to be smaller, that would be acceptable since, with enough training, he could do that on his own. So then, Koji could bring in a mask that amplifies his voice, and he could more easily summon his birds to help out in the festival, Midoriya suggested, the boy in question going very still at being called out like this. It doesn't do anything but make his voice louder, so that would count, right? Aizawa stared at Midoriya in suspicion before answering. Yes, Koji could use his mask to summon his animals for help instead of shouting. Koji's eyes widened, having never thought that getting his animal friends to help him would have been allowed in such an event that was all about their physical strength. Thank you for clearing that up, sensei. Midoriya leaned down, doodling in his notebook. Are you trying to sell us more support gear? Mina asked with a teasing smirk. Perhaps. Are you interested? Midoriya responded without looking at her. Midoriya, please do not use class time to sell your company's wares. Ada shouted, his arm, as always, chopping with each word. Aizawa groaned in response. Soon, it was time for lunch, and the students got up, eager to get some food. Unfortunately, they found a large crowd outside their classroom. Excuse me, could you please clear the way for us? We would like to get some lunch, Ada proclaimed, pushing his way forward. So this is the infamous Class 1A. The speaker stepped forward. He was a tired-looking student, with visible bags under his eyes, and messy purple hair that looked as if he woke up without attempting to comb it. What's going on? Hiroshima asked his classmates, while Bakugo scoffed and moved forward. Isn't it obvious? They're here to check out the competition. Partially, another student, blonde with blue eyes and a smug smirk upon his face, stepped forward. Midoriya recognized him as one of the examinees from the entrance exam. A power copier, if his memory was right. Some of us want to see if the hype regarding your class was merited. From what I've seen so far, I'm disappointed. You haven't even been here a minute. Midoriya spoke up before Bakugo could, already finding himself disliking the blonde copier. And in that minute, I've only seen a bunch of selfish spotlight hoggers. Why, even that photo leaking has brought more attention to your class. The boy snidely dismissed. You jerk. It's not like we wanted villains to show up. Ochako spat at the boy, who only laughed. Be that as it may, your time in the spotlight will soon be over. For now, everyone else will be gunning for HRRK. A massive hand had chopped the boy in the back of his neck, seemingly paralyzing him. I apologize for Monoma. The hand's owner, a girl with orange hair tied up in a ponytail, muttered. I'm Itsuka Kendo, representative for Class IB, and I take responsibility for Monoma's behavior. He's been acting insufferable ever since those photos leaked. He's not the only one, Pony muttered, appearing beside Kendo. He's not wrong, though. The purple-haired boy spoke up again, his expression unchanged. See, the entrance exam doesn't account for all types of powers. Some quirks aren't effective on robots, so potential heroes slip through the cracks. But the sports festival gives those people a chance to prove themselves, and take a seat away from a hero course student that doesn't do as well. He smirked. So watch yourselves, cause you may find yourselves kicked out of the hero course. Bakugo looked to speak, or rather, shout in response, but Midoriya beat him to it. Challenge accepted. The purple-haired boy looked over, shocked. "Excuse me. I was concerned that some people wouldn't be able to make an impression, so hearing you guys have a chance to get into the hero course is great," Midoriya explained. "Even if you lose your spot?" another student asked. Midoriya shrugged. "It would suck, but hey, that just means I wasn't meant to be here." But then Midoriya's look became more determined. "But make no mistake, my classmates and I won't just be handing over our spots. You want a seat in our class. Prove that you deserve it first." "So manly," Kirishima cried out. At the same time a boy with silver hair did. The two took notice of the other and immediately started pointing to one another. Maybe you're not all that bad, Green," the tired-looking boy said, ignoring the two students accusing each other of being copies. "Thanks, Purple," Midoriya said with a smirk, extending his hand. "Izuku Midoriya, Itoshi Shinso." At the end of the school day, Midoriya entered Principal Nezu's office. "Ah, young Midoriya, thank you for coming." The mystery mammal beamed at the illusionist. "Is something the matter?" Midoriya asked. "Not quite. I just wanted to discuss the upcoming sports festival." Nezu reached into his desk and pulled out a small red, white, and blue armband with the UA crest sewn onto it. Whenever UA gets an illusionist student, we always have them wear these tracking devices during the sports festival so that we can accurately get a read on their location. We can't have you stay in one spot while your illusions do all the work, you know. "I understand," Midoriya said, reaching into his bag and pulling out some blueprints. "I finished up work on the support gear I'm submitting to the festival." Nezu took the papers and looked it over, his grin widening. "Excellent work. I think this will be perfectly fine, if somewhat massive." Nezu set the blueprints aside in a pile for other approved sports festival gear. "Planning to overwhelm your classmates, are we?" The mammal didn't sound disapproving, only curious, which made Midoriya internally shudder. "Actually," Midoriya paused, shuffling nervously. "I designed it that way because, well, I had some ideas for it I wanted to do in the sports festival, but only with your permission." "Oh, like what?" Nezu asked, head tilting in curiosity, his face unchanging. "Well, what if we added something new to the games?" Midoriya asked, "namely, extra challenges during each event." "That would depend on the challenges," Nezu pondered. "In addition, we would have to be careful with how this is presented. We cannot show favoritism, after all." "True, but we also want to reassure people that we're capable and strong." "Yes?" Midoriya asked, receiving a nod from the principal. "Well, nothing says capable and strong like overcoming unfair odds." Nezu smiled, his sharp teeth making Midoriya uncomfortable. "Tell me more." Midoriya reached into his bag and pulled out a data drive. "I made a list of possible challenge scenarios based upon the events done in past sports festival games. When you've approved them, I'll get them ready." Nezu nodded. "I'll look them over and send the results tonight. But aren't you concerned with people connecting this to the Mysterio picture?" "About that. That's the main thing I need to talk to you about." "Good afternoon. This is 𝐲𝐶 here with an exclusive interview with the symbol of peace himself, All Might. Glad to be here." Within a TV studio, before a live audience, All Might sat in a yellow pinstripe suit, finally speaking up to Japan, and possibly the world, about the UA incident and what happened. "So All Might, recently your students were attacked under the watch of the most prestigious hero school in the country." 𝐲𝐶 spoke with a bit more sympathy than normal for the woman who thrived on jeering and mockery. Now, thankfully no one suffered serious injuries save for the hero teachers, who are expected to make full recovery within a week. But I think I speak for everyone when I say that event has everyone shaken to their core. The audience in the room yelled their confirmation and words of agreement before falling silent. "So, for the sake of everyone at home, do you think you'll be willing to answer some questions?" "Why, certainly, as long as it's not about world history." That got a few chuckles out of the audience and 𝐲𝐶. "Well, first, reports state that the villains there were attempting to kill you, but you had arrived late. Did you find out about their plan early on?" "As much as it shames me to admit it, no, I was unaware of the plot until after the majority of the crisis had passed." All Might looked down, bowing his head low. "To the families of my students, I deeply apologize for not being there to protect them. I swear I will never again allow such a thing to happen while I am their teacher." "So what were you doing, if not trying to bait them out?" As embarrassing as it is to admit this, I had neglected the more organized side of my teaching position, and stayed behind to finish up my paperwork. As the class in question was a rescue training exercise headed by two teachers with much more skill in that area than what I possess, I thought the class would be fine without me. It was only when Nezu failed to contact the teachers that I realized what had happened and rushed over there. I wish I could give a better reason, but alas. "All right, next, what is your quirk?" "It's called faucet follicles. It grants me the ability to constantly have luxurious hair, all without product." All Might laughed heartily. The audience, used to the pro hero's deflections, chuckled politely. Now, regarding the villain student, none of my students are villains. Shocked by the interruption, which All Might had never done in an interview before, the reporter, talk show host could only stutter out, "I am sorry. I think you heard me quite clearly." All Might was no longer smiling. Instead, he had a stern expression as he faced the cameras. To be clear, yes, we have a student who was dressed as Mysterio for his hero costume. However, that does not make him a villain by default. Only his actions and reasons would do so, which they don't. Prior to his official enrollment, Nezu visited the student's home, questioned him about his reasons for being a hero and source of his technology, and found the answers to be satisfactory. What's more, in all of his classes, including my own, the student in question has shown himself to be a dedicated student who truly wants to help people. But your student is wearing a villain's persona for reasons that I will not disclose without his permission, nor will I say who he is unless he chooses to reveal himself. All Might interrupted once again. I may be new to teaching, but I take the subject of my students very seriously. And hearing all this slander and libel has, in all honesty, sickened me. He noticeably glared at the woman doing the interview, who felt even smaller than normal beside the man. But picking this persona could be seen as offensive to people whose families suffered at the hands of the villain. Jitsu Fuai tried to counter, only for All Might to have his own counter-argument ready. Quentin Beck lived in another country, and only one scheme brought him to Japan, and that was just before the dawn of quirks. Anyone alive in that time would have died by now, as would their children have. Plenty of heroes have used controversial names and personas in their line of work. I see no reason why this student should get more attention than others. But why would someone wear the costume of someone so notorious? Jitsu questioned. Surely he's aware of the massive dislike people have towards the pre-quirk villain. Didn't you try to dissuade him from choosing it? Trust me, he and I are both more than aware of this country's attitude towards this specific persona. But he is dedicated to being a hero, if not even more so, as he is to redeeming the name of Mysterio. I'm sorry, redeem. My student believes that someone's origins does not define who they are, whether they were quirkless or related to a villain. He wants to prove that even someone with villainous powers, or in his case, villainous technology, can do good. Shigaraki watched the interview on his TV, scratching at his neck in anger. That bastard. Not enough people are talking about our attack. They're just focused on that bubble-faced griefer. I thought that was what you wanted, Hirajiri asked as he wiped clean some dirty glasses. I wanted that griefer to be kicked from the server, but instead he overshadowed us in our raid. Shigaraki whined. Doesn't matter. Blood Spider sat on a stool, using one of his blood tendrils to hold up his drink. Once I get those spider powers, Deku will just be another blood bag for me to suck dry. Not until Sensei steals his quirk, Shigaraki reminded him, assuming it is a quirk and not some kind of alteration or mutation. Blood Spider shot back. Have faith. The master will make sure you get what you want and more. Kurogiri spoke, then shifted in his spot. Blood Spider, the doctor is ready for you. Kick ass. Blood Spider downed his drink and stood up, walking through the portal that the warp villain generated. On the other side was a portly doctor with a bushy mustache, standing beside an operating table and an IV drip with a large bag of blood labeled K. Parker. Ready to be improved, young man? Hell yeah. Upgrade me, Eggman. Blood Spider said, laying on the operating table. HMPH. As if I haven't heard that one before. Toshinori sat in his apartment, looking over the latest news articles. As a result of the interview he did only a day ago, a majority of the people making hate comments had backed down. Unfortunately, many people on the 𝗧𝗨 discussion board had made suggestions that he had been brainwashed into being supportive, so there were still naysayers. Aside from that, there had been an update in the hunt for the Bullseye Killer. But before he could dwell too deeply into this, there was a knock at his door. Toshinori, it's me, Tsukachi. Come in. The detective entered, shuffling nervously while carrying a locked briefcase. I've got an update in regards to the villain, Namu. What is it? Did it break out? Toshinori sat up, relaxing only when his friend shook his head. No, it's been docile ever since we picked it up from the woods, Tsukachi assured the pro hero. It seems that without its master to command it, Namu goes into a kind of standby mode, for lack of a better analogy. However, it won't react to any outside stimuli. It ignores questions, threats, poking, burns, nothing. One of my men was startled and unloaded his rifle into it, but the creature didn't even flinch. Thankfully. This also means that it didn't fight back when we took some DNA samples for analysis. So what's the update you have for me? Toshinori asked. We found a match to its identity, kind of. Tsukachi reached into his case and pulled out a photograph. The picture was a police headshot of a man with thick lips and olive green hair. This is a report from a missing persons case 10 years ago. The man was a low-level thug who mostly worked for bigger gangs before vanishing off the face of the earth. The Namu appears to have been made from his corpse, with the DNA of 4 other people in there, along with trace amounts of gamma radiation. Midoriya said that Shigaraki claimed it possessed multiple quirks. Toshinori whispered, Tsukachi going very still in response. Do you think he's still alive? No. Toshinori looked up, his gaze hard. I smashed his head in. That monster's head was little more than a shattered egg on the pavement. More likely, these people were remnants of his organization who discovered Namu and tried to do one last attack against Ya. I'm going to stop you right there. Toshinori looked down at his phone in surprise. A call active, with the WMH logo upon its screen. Subaraya, how did you access my phone? Toshinori coughed up some blood in shock. I didn't even answer a call. I hacked it. But more importantly, I've also recently obtained information regarding the Namu creature. Or, well, its creator. Subaraya said this with a tone that was barely hiding anger behind it. I can confirm that its creator, 𝐴ll, is indeed still alive. Tsukachi and Toshinori gaped at the AI, the latter being the first to speak up. How? He was dead. I killed him myself. Oh please, death means nothing if you have the right connections or technology. Trust me, I should know. Subaraya muttered. How did you find this out? Tsukachi asked, opting to ignore Subaraya's comment for the moment. I honestly doubt you'd believe me. My lie detector quirk can work on AIs. Try me. Tsukachi shot back. Fine, a demon from hell told me. And that is not me being dramatic, or figurative, or symbolic, or poetic, or metaphoric, or any other fancy method of speech. He was Mephisto, a literal misery-spreading demon from the fire and brimstone-filled Christian hell. One who 𝐀𝐦, my originator, was in the service of for a while, and he appeared before me in the form of a zombie with centipedes within him and told me that 𝐴ll is alive and trying to become more powerful than ever. Powerful enough that he was worried about him getting strong enough to challenge his own vast power. Subaraya explained, making sure his words were clear and concise. Toshinori stared at the AI. That has to be a lie, right, Tsukachi? Tsukachi. Toshinori looked up at his friend, who had grown very pale in terror. His friend looked at him and could only say truth. Toshinori's eyes widened, and he had to hold back a stress-induced coughing fit, blood spraying onto his fist. We cough. Hack. Where is he? Cough. Where is 𝐴ll? Mephisto was, unfortunately, not willing to divulge that information. Subaraya grumbled. I'm not actually sure if he just wants me to suffer for 𝐀𝐦's failures in life, or if he actually doesn't know. But more importantly, the potentially most dangerous man alive since Dr. fucking Doom is going to be after my apprentice. Subaraya, please calm down. Toshinori tried to placate the audibly angry AI, who wasn't having it. Calm down. You've put a child, one that I actually care about, into the crosshairs of a maniac who can steal quirks and who knows what else at this point. I know, and if I had known he was still alive I wouldn't have done it, but what's done is done. Toshinori pointed out. You need to tell him and his mother about this immediately. Subaraya insisted, though he was no longer shouting. I will. But right now young Midoriya needs to focus on the sports festival. Are you serious? Subaraya interrupted, back to shouting. Midoriya's going to be on national TV. It'd be easy for 𝐴ll to send an assassin to off the child. 𝐴ll won't do that. The man wants to steal my quirk first, and I'm certain that he knows Midoriya now has it. Toshinori explained. In any case, he's always preferred to wait in between attacks to lick his wounds and gather up more resources. He'll take this chance to study Midoriya, see what he is capable of. What's more, Midoriya needs to build his connections and support if he's going to be a successful hero. Toshinori sighed. Besides, he's not a soldier or a hero yet. Midoriya is a child, and he deserves to have some levity before I tell him and his mother what danger he's in. But I will tell them after the sports festival. You'd better, Subaraya growled, hanging up afterwards. Toshinori sighed and leaned back in his seat. What am I going to tell the chief? Tsukachi muttered, still freaking out over the revelations. Tell him an underground informant told you, and he got his information through unknown means, Toshinori suggested. Tsukachi remained silent, before finally speaking up. Hell is real. It's an actual place with demons. I encountered an alien once. Guess it was only a matter of time before we learned to add demons to that list. All Might admitted, trying to bring some levity to the situation. Tsukachi just groaned, cupping his face with his hands. So, May, what do you think of Octavius' arms? 𝐴𝐡𝐢 lowered herself from the obstacle course. Strapped around her waist and chest was a harness, a headband covered in wires wrapped around her forehead like a crown, one that sent commands to 4 telescopic arms ending with claws. Arms modeled after that of Dr. Octopus. They're amazing, Tsubu, but with these arms I have no room to carry my babies. They complained. I could use these, but I don't want to just use one baby. I want to use my skates, my jetpack, my laser rifle, my shields, all of them. So many babies, and I can't fit them onto me because these arms get in the way. If I had a way to carry all I wanted at once, it would be perfect. She turned to the work table, muttering to herself. Maybe I could create some kind of super baby that would let me have them all at once. Oh, but that'd be so heavy and cumbersome. Well, there is an option for that, 𝗬𝗲 said after a moment of thought. A project that was worked on by an old friend of mine shortly before his passing. Blueprints were drawn up, but he had yet to implement it in any of his projects, although I did use his notes for building parts of the new actor robots. Really? What is it? They asked, unclipping the harness. Before 𝗬𝗲 could share his idea, Midoriya entered, wearing new gauntlets and his 𝐬𝐬 specs. The gauntlets were identical to his old ones, save for a set of vents on the side, and slightly larger gloves with armor on the back of the golden fingers. Midoriya, how do the new gloves feel? They asked. They fit great. The impact gel barely impedes my movements. He wiggled his fingers to prove it. But I'm not too sure about the compression sleeves in the suit. Might impede the robotic skeleton's movements. We can replace the joints areas with something less cumbersome, 𝗬𝗲 suggested. Also, I've received the emails for the sports festival support items and have begun construction on each device. And you're not sabotaging them, right? Midoriya asked pointedly as he approached the impact reader. As logical as it would be to do so, no. 𝗬𝗲 confirmed, though his annoyance was clear. Nor will I be showing you or Miss 𝐻𝐡𝐤 the devices themselves. Good, Midoriya said, facing the impact plate as he removed the prototype gloves. Doing the control test first, starting out at my highest output without the gloves, 5% full cowling. Scanners are active, 𝗬𝗲 announced. Midoriya focused, green lightning of his quirk appearing around him. Reeling his fist back, Midoriya screamed smash and punched the pressure plate. The device moved back, warping slightly as the readings came onto the screen. Okay, we have a baseline of what I can do without protection, Midoriya noted. He flexed his fingers, then came up with an idea. Midoriya swapped out the warped plate for an intact one. Going to try and strain myself with a 10% charge, see how that affects me, and if I can manage it, I'll try a punch. Very well, but be careful. Recovery girl isn't here to heal you, 𝗬𝗲 warned Midoriya, who nodded and turned to the pressure plate. Midoriya focused, green lightning arcing around him as if he had gone Super Saiyan. Unfortunately, he found that 10% was too much for him to handle. No good. I'm going to keep lowering it by 1% until I can handle it. Understood, 𝗬𝗲 called back. Midoriya focused, but 9, while less of a strain, still felt too much for now. Thankfully, 8% was doable. Looks like I'm stuck at 8% for now. I imagine that you'll be able to gradually increase your output over time, 𝗬𝗲 noted, his hologram stroking its goatee in thought. Now how does the punching feel? Midoriya turned to the pressure plate, and with another shout of smash, the plate was warped even further than last time. As expected, there was an increase of output by approximately 3%, 𝗬𝗲 said after running the numbers. Now let's see that same percentage, but with the new gloves added to the equation. Midoriya nodded, swapped out the plate for a new one, and slipped on the prototype glove. Smash. Must you say it every time? 𝗬𝗲 asked as the plate once again warped and cracked from the impact. Interesting. There was an approximately 67% increase in damage inflicted with the new gauntlet design. How did they feel? Any pain upon impact? Amazing, Midoriya said, moving his fingers without issue. I couldn't feel anything. Even on impact, it was like I was punching a tough, cool pillow, and I could feel the pressure vents blasting the worst of the shockwave away from me. Good. May's idea to add Hermann Schultz shockwave absorption and redirection technology was a massive boon. 𝗬𝗲 spoke aloud as he took some notes. It would help if we had some vibranium to absorb the majority of the blowback from your quirk, but I was unable to obtain any, and I predict that we will not be able to do so for a good long time, unless we made friends with Wakanda or bought some on the black market. Still, I think this design will work for now. We'll make do with what we've got, 𝗬𝗲, Midoriya assured the AI. I'll get to work adding the gel and shock absorbers to the other parts of the costume, May proclaimed from her corner of the room, where she was adjusting a pair of what appeared to be rocket skates. It should be ready by your hero internships. Perfect. So what's your plan for the sports festival, May? Midoriya asked. Sorry boss man, but that's a secret, May responded without looking up. Midoriya smiled. Glad to hear it. 𝗬𝗲 watched the two students joke and chat. Against his instincts, he had refrained from telling Midoriya about his encounter with Mephisto or what he had learned about from the demon. He would respect All Might's desire, but if he deviated from his promise to the AI, well, the man had better hope it wouldn't come to that. Midoriya and May soon left the DVD store, chatting amicably as they made plans for the upcoming games. So Midoriya, are you going to tell everyone that you own wondrous might and heroism? Midoriya hummed in thought before speaking. Probably not. With all the controversy, I think it's better if you alone do the advertising for our business. I'll just keep quiet on my tech's origins. I understand, May said, finger on her chin in thought. So, what's the plan for us? Are we going to be working together or competing against each other? That, I think, is going to depend on what events will occur, Midoriya said, deep in thought. In the past games, the first round has always been a way to lower the number of competitors, though there has never been anything in the rules saying students can't help each other out, and will definitely be able to work together in the second round since it has always encouraged cooperation and teamwork to some degree or another. And, naturally, we'll have to be competing against each other in the final round DORIYA. Midoriya looked up, stopping in time to avoid running into one of his neighbors, a lizard heteromorph with pink hair carrying an old TV out of a rundown apartment building. Oh, sorry, 𝐬𝐻𝐸-san. It's all right, Midoriya-san, Shuichi 𝐬𝐻𝐸 said, visibly relaxing at the sight of his friendly visitor. Oh, are you moving out? Midoriya asked. No, not really. Just helping a friend get situated in their new place, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 said, not meeting Midoriya's eyes. They don't really have a lot of stuff, so I thought I'd loan them a few things. Oh, who is it? They asked, a smile forming. A jail friend. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 bit his lip, trying to think of what to say. 𝐬𝐻𝐸, what's the hold up? Divided by move your ass. A voice called from the apartment, speaking in a Japanese then Chicago accent. Hey Jin-san, Spectre-san. Midoriya politely called into the apartment. Well used to his neighbor's mental condition, Jin emerged, wearing a worn shirt and pants that smelled of cigarettes and cheap whiskey, a gaming console under his arm, while he carried a bag of apples in the other arm. Oh, sorry, Midoriya-san, Hatsune-chan, sorry about that, we didn't see you there. Stephen Grant greeted cheerfully. It's been a while since we've seen you. It has, Midoriya admitted politely. How are you and your roommates? We're great. Divided by doing just fine, kiddo. Divided by we're managing. Divided by could be worse, I suppose. Divided by just awful, Jin muttered, speaking as his normal self. Then as Mark Spector, Stephen Grant, Jake Lockley, and Twice, respectively. I'm sorry to hear that, Twice, Midoriya said apologetically. Are you helping 𝐬𝐻𝐸-san? I didn't realize you knew each other. We only met up a short while ago, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 explained, setting down his TV. He got me out of a tight spot with some members of the CRC, so I thought I'd help his new neighbor move in. Those guys, they muttered. I hope that Moon Knight guy drives them out. I dunno, he's kind of violent for me. Divided by not violent enough, Jin muttered, Twice speaking up afterwards. So, we heard about the USJ, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 said, quickly changing the subject. And, listen, whoever that Mysterio classmate is. Midoriya looked at him, worried. Let him know, whoever they are, that I think they're a hero. They probably could have picked a better costume or persona to use, but their actions said a lot about them. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 continued. And that I personally don't believe that slander being posted online. Same here, Ditto agreed. Divided by well said, 𝐬𝐻𝐸-san. Divided by he seems alright, I suppose. Midoriya smiled, but didn't trust himself to speak up, lest he give himself away too soon. Hey, the UA Sports Festival is coming up. Think we'll be seeing the Mysterio kid compete? Stephen asked Midoriya and May. There's a good chance of that, yeah, Midoriya admitted. We're both competing in the games this year, too. May spoke up. Really? Well, I guess we're gonna have to watch the games, give our support, Spectre said, smiling, before Twice took over. I dunno. I've never really liked sports. Same. But I think we can make an exception for this year, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 said, turning to the two students. We'll be rooting for the both of you. Thank you, May said, before her eyes zoomed in, then widened. Doria, our train. Oh, right. It was good talking to all of you. And please tell your neighbor we said welcome to the area, Midoriya said with a smile as May dragged him away. Mark Spector sighed once the two were out of range. He's a good kid. Yeah, but I dunno if we can trust him with this. I mean, we've technically kidnapped a little kid, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 muttered, his voice low. I doubt anyone would see us taking in and looking after a girl who had run away from an abusive crime organization as a kidnapping. Lockley muttered, speak for yourself. I wouldn't be surprised if someone accused me of trying to eat her, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 muttered dryly. But you do have a point about getting them involved. UA students or not, they can't be in the crosshairs, Grant conceded, Jake shortly after taking over. Still don't see why the old lady can't just use her connections to get the shy Hasekai to back off. Divided by she's not a member of the organization anymore, remember, Mark spoke up. Hard to believe a Yakuza princess was in my neighborhood, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 muttered, picking the TV back up and following his friend back to the safe house where he was staying. The girl had been horribly withdrawn and quiet since 𝐶onshu refused to take her quirk. But hopefully playing some games or watching a few cartoons would cheer her up. The day of the sports festival came, and Midoriya was attending the event, accompanied by 𝐬𝐸 in an animatronic copy of his Ludwig form. I still say that we could have watched it just fine from home, 𝐀𝐦 murmured, clearly nervous about the large crowd. We could, but I wish to speak with one of Midoriya's teachers regarding a private matter, 𝐬𝐸 admitted, paying for the tickets with cash. And you should be here as well. What's wrong? 𝐴𝐻𝐻 asked, her nervousness vanishing, replaced with a determined gaze. Is Izuku being bullied? Thankfully he is not, Tsuburaya truthfully assured her. But it is in regards to his education. Specifically He looked around, then lowered his voice somewhat. Legacy he's accepted and how it will affect him going forward. Oh, 𝐴𝐻𝐻 said, and some of the tension vanished from her posture. Yes, that might be a good thing to talk to his teachers about. Still, will you be able to talk to the teacher during the sports festival? I'll find a way, don't worry, Tsuburaya said vaguely. 𝐴𝐻𝐻. Before Midoriya's mother could speak up, she was tackled by a middle-aged woman with spiked blonde hair and a massive grin. I never thought I'd see you at a place like this. Who's that? Your date. Kinda old for you, but hey, no judging. While 𝐴𝐻𝐻 choked at the idea of dating Tsuburaya, the AI in question calmly took out a handkerchief to clean his glasses. Not that he actually needed glasses, but he was a method actor. He did, however, alter his voice to sound more normal. Hardly. I'm Dr. Alfred Reinhardt Tsuburaya. I'm the one who so you're Izuku's tech provider. Mitsuki interrupted with a smile. Yeah, my brat told me about you, and how you helped at the USJ. Guess my husband and I owe you our gratitude, Tsuburaya-san. She thrust her hand out eagerly. Name's Mitsuki Bakugo. Tsuburaya politely shook her hand. I take it you're Katsu-sari, Bakugo-kun's mother. Afraid so, Mitsuki admitted, unbothered by the near-cultural slip-up. The three continued their walk towards the seats, 𝐻𝐻𝐻 still rebooting. I know Katsuki-kun's a real piece of work. I'd blame his middle school and their clearly quirkist policies since it enabled his worst traits. But that's just shifting the blame away from us. Nah, the truth is that Masaru and I haven't done enough to rein him in. We've been trying to pull his head out of his ass for the past few years. We've seen a bit of improvement, but not enough. Tsuburaya nodded, already finding the woman to be a far more tolerable person than her child. Well, rest assured, a private investigation by an underground pro-hero has discovered the middle school's crimes and closed it down. Good. I hope that place gets demolished, Mitsuki muttered, letting everyone kick Izuku-kun around because his quirk hadn't shown up yet. Honestly, I hear a business is planning on turning the site into some new kind of facility. Possibly a factory of some kind, Tsuburaya said casually. I'd rather see it burn, personally, Mitsuki said with a scowl that Tsuburaya saw was nearly identical to her son's. Same, Tsuburaya said darkly as they approached a man with spiked brown hair and square glasses holding some snacks. Hey, Masaru, look who I found. Mitsuki shoved 𝐻𝐻 forward, though she noticeably had some trouble with Tsuburaya. Oof, what are you made of, metal? Partially. My quirk gives me metal bones, but as a result I'm very heavy. Tsuburaya lied with ease. Sorry Tsuburaya-san. Mitsuki apologized, while Tsuburaya just waved her off and sat down. Oh, you're Izuku's tech provider. The man who was clearly Katsuki Bakugo's father asked, offering the man some pocky. And his trainer before Toshinori showed up. Tsuburaya confirmed, accepting one. Even though he was a robot and thus did not actually require eating, his android body was capable of safely imitating it for realism purposes. I'm sorry if this is offensive, but why? Mitsuki began, though Tsuburaya interrupted. Do I have a Japanese surname as well as an English one, despite being white? Seeing the woman nod, Tsuburaya continued. I was born here, but looked after by some Japanese locals. Still, I believe that one should retain something of one's origins, so I kept my father's surname as my middle name. Though I admit I'm more comfortable with Tsuburaya. 𝐻𝐻𝐻, having finally recovered from her blue screen of death, looked at Tsuburaya, unsure if what he was saying was a complete lie or not. The man had never mentioned who had maintained him. She had assumed that he did it to himself, but was he on his own in that time? So how'd you meet Izuku? Masaru asked, not noticing 𝐻𝐻𝐻's pondering. Well, that is quite the interesting story. Class 1 was in the locker rooms, putting away their clothes and any unneeded items. Everyone had put on their gym outfits. Although many were upset over how they couldn't enter the games wearing their costumes, everyone, including Midoriya, had acknowledged that it would have been a massively unfair advantage over the non-hero courses. Now that they were ready, 5 students went to a couple of bags with their names upon it. Ochako unzipped her bag and pulled out a silver backpack with a pair of folded-up wings and a thruster on the bottom to aid her in moving quickly in the air. Kaminari got a simplified version of his circuit breaker belt to help him go just a bit past his limits without harm. 𝐀𝐦 attached a pair of cooling vents to his leg engines to help them rapidly cool down. Nina got a pair of long gloves with nozzle-like openings on the wrists to help her aim her spray of acid. Midoriya, lastly, pulled out his support item, developed by Hatsum in class to his specific instructions. What is that thing? Mina asked, adjusting her gloves. Oh, it's my support item, which I call the indie production. It lets me give commands without having to say it verbally. Midoriya said, gesturing to a wrist-mounted screen on his left arm. A metal ring with small LEDs embedded within it around the wrist, with 3 more rings on his other wrist and ankles. Commands to what? Bajiro asked. Midoriya smiled and typed into the screen. From the side of the device, a small silver disc, no larger than silver dollar, emerged and hovered above the boy, covering Midoriya in a hologram of his hero outfit. Midoriya, don't tell me you brought your drones with you, Ada shouted, chopping his arm. Ada, the rules clearly stated that I could only carry 1 support item with me into the games, and said items can only perform an action I am already capable of. Midoriya reminded him, and this gauntlet is just so that I don't have to speak up and ruin any attempts at stealth, watch, code phrase, and cut. Instantly the drone's hologram vanished, and Midoriya turned to Ada with an affronted look. I would never break the rules. I even showed this device to Nezu and he approved it for use in the games. Wait, how does this do something you're already capable of? You can't make holograms, Minta pointed out. True, but I am capable of disguising myself through mundane means, Midoriya reminded him. But that takes time and materials. And these holograms are faster and require only pre-programmed disguises. Again, Nezu was fine with it, and Aizawa never said the support item had to be related to our quirks. Besides, I've only got 1 drone on me, and it's not combat capable. To prove it, Midoriya grabbed the device in question and handed it over to Momo, the most mechanically gifted of the class. The heiress looked the device over, even disassembling it with a screwdriver she created, but could find no extra features beyond its hovering mechanism, radio receiver, long-range microphone, a camera, and its hologram projector. Reassembling the drone, she gave it back to Midoriya. He's right. It just floats, listens, observes, and projects holograms. He could still go invisible, Ada pointed out. He can't do that by normal means. Actually, I can't do that. Well, I guess I could, but it's... Let me show you. Midoriya typed into his glove, and the drone took flight again, projecting a hologram that covered up Midoriya. At first it worked fine, but then Midoriya raised his arm up and through the invisibility hologram. It vanished again a second later, but then Midoriya turned around, and the drone again struggled to hide him until he stood completely still. I have to carry drones several at once because I haven't been able to create a stable invisibility program that needs only 1 projector. Multiple projectors can cover me better and pick up any slack the other drones have trouble with. But what if you have more drones? Ochako asked, adjusting the pack she wore on her. Trust me, I don't have any other drones on me, Midoriya promised as the 1 drone he had with him returned to its spot on his gauntlet. Midabro, we like you, but, Kirishima said, unsure of how to continue. Thankfully, Midoriya understood and didn't appear offended. All right, Momo. Midoriya turned to his class vice president, pulling out an energy bar. Could you build something that could detect any other drones? Oh, sure. Momo quickly consumed it, then focused, forming a small goggle-like device that she looked through. There's nothing on radar, nor thermal, or electromagnetic imaging. I don't think there are any other drones in here. I dunno, Zero muttered. Then without warning, suddenly shot several strands of tape into the air, which all fluttered down without sticking onto anything that wasn't already visible. Everyone gave the boy dirty looks, while Momo just sighed and produced a chemical solvent to remove the tape strands from her classmate. Sorry, just wanted to make sure. Once the tape was removed, Midoriya stretched out and sighed. Well, no time to waste, guys. We should get going, Midoriya. The boy in question stopped, just in time to avoid running into Shoto Todoroki. The heterochromatic boy was scrutinizing him, his expression steeled and ready. Objectively, I believe that you are not as powerful as me, but you are a clever and dangerous person with a decent arsenal of support items. Thank you. What's more? Todoroki continued on as if he hadn't heard the other boy speak. It's clear to me that you've gained All Might's support. Todoroki continued, not letting the boy speak. No, I won't pry into the story behind that, but know this, out there, you won't be allowed to bring your army of drones, so you'll have to rely only on your quirk. As a result, I will defeat you. Consider this a declaration of war. Everyone stared at Todoroki, blinking in surprise at the standoffish boy's statement. Dang, what's with the hostility? Mina asked. It's just some games. This is the most watched sporting event in Japan. Todoroki swiftly interrupted the pink girl. We're not here to play nice or make friends. We're here to win. Nothing more. While Midoriya was caught off guard, much like the others, he quickly recovered and turned to him with a smile. Well then, bring your all, because I certainly will be. Todoroki narrowed his eyes at the green-haired boy smiling at him, then turned away. Midoriya watched Todoroki leave, a sudden thought coming to him. From what he had seen in his class, and the footage Tsuburaya had gathered from the USJ incident, Todoroki only ever used ice. Even when his life was in danger, the only time he came close to using his fire was to free some classmates that got caught up in one of his ice attacks. The red and white hair seemed to indicate that he had both fire and ice, and his father was the pro-hero Endeavor, so logically he shouldn't be limited to just his cryonic abilities. So why didn't Todoroki use his fire? That was intense, Kiro. You've said it, 𝐬𝐸 commented, the exchange bringing Midoriya out of his contemplation. He's not wrong, though. Gyro spoke up. Out there, we are going to be competing against one another. Before anyone could argue further, the intercom crackled to life, announcing that 𝐻𝐸 was to make their way to the field. So the group went on, Midoriya placing his tracking device over his right arm, the device activating once it detected his pulse. As the class stepped out into the stadium, the loudspeakers crackled to life, President Mike's voice shouting to the audience gathered. All right, people. Welcome to the US Sports Festival. Can I get a yeah? The crowd responded with enthusiastic cheers and cries of yeah. Glad to see everyone's excited. This is President Mike here, acting as your announcer, with my partner in crime stopping and teaching, Shota Aizawa. How did you rope me into doing this? Aizawa grumbled, nursing a mug of coffee, to which Mike just laughed. Now, everyone, let's give a big hand to the Hero Course students who have been making massive waves in the media. It's the villain fighting Class 1A. Hero, I haven't been this nervous since I came out as a girl to my parents, 𝐬𝐸 muttered as the crowd erupted into cheers and clapping. Though Midoriya could still spot a few people scrutinizing them, thought it made him more nervous about his plans, he was determined to see it through. The next classes for 1B, the support course, Gen Ed, and business courses were soon brought out, though it was clear that they had much less of a reception, with smaller, polite claps instead of the enthusiastic roars 𝐻𝐸 had received. Midoriya noted more people had joined in for the non-hero courses. In those groups, Midoriya could see several people observing them, like 𝗫𝐸 with the Gen Ed course and Mei, who waved to him with a smile. Next to her was a preteen girl with a spider on her head, pushing a red box on wheels that could easily fit her inside of it. Introducing our referee for these games, the R-rated heroine Midnight. Midnight walked out onto the field. Actually, she strutted out in her full hero costume, shamelessly swaying her hips and winking at various cameras while waving to the people cheering and catcalling her. That cannot be regulation-approved attire, Ada grumbled, looking away in embarrassment. I'm not complaining, Kaminari spoke up, Minta nodding eagerly. Glad to be here, Mike. And even happier to see several young and excited young men and women ready to pounce on this opportunity. How has she not gotten a lawsuit? Gyro muttered, blushing at their teacher's outfit. So let's get this ceremony started. And what better way than the opening speech, presented by Izuku Midoriya of Class 1A. Wait, Midoriya, Sato questioned. Why does he get to do it? A girl from the Gen Ed course cried out. Kiro, he did get the highest ranking in the entrance exam, 𝐬𝐸 pointed out. Yeah, in the hero course. The support course student with a spider on her head muttered. He's also the one responsible for stopping the Namu. Mei hissed at her, wearing a massive metal backpack, an advanced welding mask that opened up down the middle of her face, a pair of bracers, elbow and knee pads, and a pair of heavy-looking boots, all of which was connected via a basic exoskeleton with a dark metallic purple appearance, accented with brass and gear-like designs. Midoriya stepped up to the podium, his posture nervous, tapped the microphone a few times, took a deep breath, and spoke aloud 3 words that no one, not Tsuburaya, not Ochako, not even Mei, were expecting. I am Mysterio. I am Mysterio. Those 3 words immediately silenced the audience watching, both in the stadium and beyond. Everyone was staring in shock at the plain, green-haired hero student who calmly admitted to using the identity of a supervillain with the same air one did to announce what they had for lunch. A lot of people have been making theories and spreading hurtful gossip about UA and its students because of that photo posted online. Let me put an end to that all right now. That photo was of me, right after the attack at the USJ. Midoriya continued, his face passive. I admit this for many reasons. Firstly, because my classmates with green hair have faced scorn and distrust, unrightfully so, for a trait they shared with me, and I refuse to allow that to continue. Secondly, but just as importantly, is because I am not a villain. I want to be a hero. The original Mysterio, Quentin Beck, wasn't a hero, but neither was the second Black Knight, Nathan Garrett, whose nephew Dane Whitmane took up the mantle after the former's passing to be a hero. I have no intention of changing the mantle I have chosen, because this incident has shown me that the world is too narrow-minded in its thinking. People forget that before he was an Avenger, the Sandman was a villain who worked with the original Mysterio. Spider-Man, one of the greatest heroes of the past, was a normal guy who everyone hated and called the arrest for, often by the very people he saved. Midoriya took a deep breath. People want the world to be either this or that, black and white, good and evil, right and wrong. It makes things easy and simple, so we don't have to think. But that's not how life is. I'm keeping this identity because with it, I can challenge you all to question what you immediately see, not just with illusions, but with my whole philosophy. And the very identity I've taken up being used in ways you won't expect. Midoriya looked up, spotting several bystanders murmuring, some pulling out their phones, possibly to look up the names he dropped. Regardless, he kept going. I know people will look at me and question UA's acceptance of my choice in personas. They'll ask if I was a traitor. I am not, but that won't stop the questions, the accusations. I could say any number of pretty words or speeches, and that won't change your fear. So for today, I'll instead embrace it. Midoriya turned to his classmates, who were staring at him in confusion. With a smile that looked like it belonged more to a predatory animal than a hero, Midoriya continued, "My class fought real villains and we survived. But some would attribute that to luck, or the villains just trying to make me look good. So to my classmates in WHAT and beyond, be warned, for I am hijacking the UA Sports Festival for today." The crowd went into an uproar of shock and anger, while the classmates looked at Midoriya like he was insane. Midoriya continued on, his voice getting more determined as he leveled a steely gaze upon the students before him. "To clarify, Principal Nezu has granted me permission to bend the rules to a certain point, to allow me to be an X factor in the upcoming games. Why? Because I have a message for the villains and critics who think that we only survived because we got lucky. I'll show them that we took them down because we are UA students, not lucky. You're not getting 𝐬𝐬 or 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝐻 to help out this time. I'll challenge and push each of you, so I can prove that no matter what I, a supposed villain, can throw at you, it will not be enough to stop any of you, hero course or otherwise." Midoriya raised his hand, and upon his body the costume of Mysterio formed over him in a ring of pixels. In one swift movement, Mysterio pulled off his armored gauntlet and tossed it down to the ground, where it exploded into a pillar of green smoke that formed the UA crest. Consider the gauntlet thrown, and let the games begin. Without another word, Midoriya stepped out of the illusion, wearing only his gym uniform, tracking armband, and his support item, and joined the rest of his classmates, most of whom were staring in shock at the usually quiet and reserved boy having basically announced to the world that he's declared war on everyone there. "So manly," Kirishima muttered, unaware of the silver-haired boy in 1B muttering the same thing. Retaking the stage, Midnight cleared her throat. "Well, that was certainly a speech to remember. And don't worry, as part of the deal with Nezu, Midoriya-san will have his own challenges to handle as well. But first, let's see what is in store for our eager young boys and girls." Upon the screen, several options rolled past, events that Midoriya couldn't even get a chance to read before it settled upon two massive words. "And our first task is the obstacle race," Midnight called out. "The objective is simple. Everyone will be racing through a 4-kilometer obstacle course outside the stadium. You're free to use whatever methods you'd like to get ahead, but you must stay within the course boundaries or else you'll be disqualified. Oh, and this is exclusively for young Midoriya, but you should all pay attention anyways." Midnight briefly paused to glance at her tablet. "First off, before Midoriya can cross the finish line, he'll need to accumulate 100 villain points, accomplished by him either taking out or simply slowing down his classmates by restraining them. If he manages to reach 100 points, he may cross the finish line without consequences. Each minute they don't move ahead, as well as any removed students, will count as a single point. In contrast, for every student who gets past him, his rank will be lowered by 2. And don't worry, Midoriya will be wearing a tracking device that reads his pulse, so the judges will know for certain where he is at all times, though the racers won't. That makes sense. I need to build a rep as a bad guy. After all," Midoriya thought to himself, "my plan should be simple enough with only minor modifications necessary." That being said, the racers are allowed to attack Midoriya, with 4 direct hits meaning he's lost his ranking position by 20 points, while the students who hit him will be moved ahead by 5 points each. Lastly, failure to get into the top 10 winners for this round means immediate disqualification for young Midoriya. Midoriya froze. All around him Midoriya could sense several glares and eager smiles. Most of them were from people outside his class, but he knew that a few from within his class, including Bakugo and Todoroki, were eager to take him out of the sporting event as well. Maybe outing myself as a villain persona user wasn't the smartest idea after all. Midoriya walked alongside his friends, taking up his position at the starting line, where he immediately noticed a problem. That entrance is way too narrow to let everyone through, so why? Oh, I see. That's the first obstacle. How clever. And perfect for my plan. You know, when we first met, I didn't take you to be an illusionist. Midoriya looked over, Pony Tsunotori close beside him and ready to run as well. Your speech was really impassioned and came from the heart. But illusionists are supposed to be dishonest, right? Midoriya simply smiled and, recalling an old American film series, decided to paraphrase a quote from the protagonist. Actually, a dishonest man you can always trust to be dishonest. Honestly, it's the honest ones you want to watch out for, because you can never predict when they're going to do something incredibly stupid. Pony stared at him confused. And go. The students ran forward, but before they could take more than a few steps, a thick cloud of green fog filled the starting area. Everyone coughed and stumbled, trying to see their way through it. What the hell? Divided by I can't see. Divided by was that Midoriya? Divided by Deku. Only moments later the fog vanished, But everyone's confusion remained, for they were no longer at the stadium. No, now they were standing in what looked to be a space station. Past the gate, the track they were meant to run on was suspended over a galactic void, stars and nebulas high above them, separated from the shocked students only by a visible force field. Several had cries of shock, others cussed in disbelief, some cursed Midoriya as cheating, while a few, 𝐻𝐸𝐻 and May in particular, giggled in amusement and eagerness. "Nice one, Midoriya," they muttered, adjusting her backpack. But it's every inventor for themselves. Emerging from her back, seemingly being built as they appeared, were 6 long, robotic tentacles tipped in blunt claws. Rising above her shocked classmates, May charged forward, her welding mask snapping closed over her face, passing through the narrow gate while ignoring the shocked cries from her classmates and competitors. "And my new programmable matter pack, or PMP for short, developed by me, will help me overcome any obstacle by building whatever I need on the spot." She unfortunately found herself tripped up by a silvery web, emerging from a mechanized suit of Spider-Man-esque armor. The robot's face, a black LED screen, altered from red eyes to show its pilot, the girl from the support course, and her pet spider, which was tapping away on a screen behind her. "Sorry, but as members of the Spider family, I, Penny Parker, aspiring Spider Girl, and my companion Mayflower, are contractually obligated to not allow any octopi to overtake us in any way." May growled in response and quickly recovered, giving chase to the red robot, her 6 arms granting her much-needed speed. Quickly remembering they were in a race, the rest of the students ran forward, trying to pass through the barrier. But as Midoriya had noted, it was far too small for everyone to fit through, and they were quickly jammed up against each other. Only a few, like Bakugo, Momo, and 𝐻𝐸𝐻 managed to get past by moving over the crowd, Momo using a sort of rocket broomstick while 𝐻𝐸𝐻 used her new jetpack. 𝐬𝐸 was about to join them, imitating Spider-Man's web swinging. But a huge blast of ice shot out, freezing everyone in place. "Sorry, but I have no intention of losing," 𝐘𝐦 muttered, his voice insincere as he sped forward, ice forming behind him. With it, he managed to restrain even Penny and May's mechanical marvels. However, he had barely made it out of the doorway when a circle of red light appeared before him. "What in the—" Boom! 𝐘𝐦 was tossed back, thrown away by the blast of a concussion missile that detonated several feet before him. Thankfully, he was able to create an ice wall that kept him from being sent out of the course itself, and he recovered quickly. The loudspeakers around them crackled to life, and Midoriya's voice rang out, the student himself standing atop a hovering green disc. But he spoke as if he was a cheesy villain from a children's anime. "Sorry, Shoto Todoroki, but you heard the rules. I can't let you guys pass me just yet, but let's change things up from cinema. I'm a brand new Mysterio, so I think I'll update the source materials I use for inspiration." Approaching from several spots around the pathway were the 0-pointers from the entrance exams, each one bearing a small tetrahedral device attached to their heads. However, they were quickly covered up with holograms of giant Mysterio robots with spiked hands, leering down at the students exiting the archway as a bombastic video game boss theme blared from the speakers. "Now get a load of this." Seriously, practically everyone shouted as more red lights appeared, taking aim. Todoroki tried simply freezing the robots over and skating past. But a swarm of UFOs appeared, shooting lasers that melted away the ice, while others blasted waves of sound that shattered the thicker chunks, sending them after everyone else's projectiles. More UFOs appeared, armed with cannons shooting orbs of what looked to be quick-hardening green slime. Kirishima barely missed being hit with one such glob, an unlucky Gen Ed student instead getting the hit. May, having removed herself from the ice, retracted 2 of the PMA pack's 6 arms, replacing them instead with a laser rifle that she opened fire with, hitting each UFO with expert precision, their holographic cloaks vanishing to reveal them as Midoriya's combat drones. "Thank you, Grandpa, for those gun training sessions." Penny, meanwhile, was opening fire with weapons from a pair of shoulder-mounted cannons, trying to get past each 0-pointer using her robot speed and agility, only for her to find herself overwhelmed by the smaller, more agile UFOs. 𝐻𝐸𝐻, thankfully, landed on one such drone with enough speed that she took it out. "Guys, we can't handle these on our own, so let's just call a truce until they're all gone," she cried out, blocking a slime shot with another UFO. While many agreed and started helping each other out, a few were arguing against it. "This is a competition. We don't need to." Monoma's rant was cut off by 𝐬𝐸 pulling him away from a glob of the quick-hardening substance. "Fine, but once they're gone, it's back to proving my class superiority." Monoma scooped up and tossed a handful of pebbles, which grew in size into boulders that took down some of the drones and crippled one of the 0-pointers, leaving it open for Kirishima and Itsuka to take down. Several of them, across the various different courses, took aim at Midoriya, who repeatedly vanished in puffs of green smoke, reappearing in another spot, laughing maniacally as he hovered ahead of the group. "Come on, people. I want to see you go plus ultra." "Where is the plus ultra?" Todoroki seethed. He was supposed to breeze through this sports festival using only his ice, not relying on anyone else, or his bastard father's fire. So he pulled away, trying to move past the robots even as what looked like meteors fell from the sky to keep him back. But no matter what they did, he kept on using only his right side's ice. Outside the illusion, the crowd was going nuts, the screens showing the illusions and robots the students were facing. In the booth, 𝐬𝐬 was nursing his coffee, trying to avoid the headache that was building up in him, while Present Mike was messaging 𝐁𝐬 to clarify that yes, everything Midoriya was doing was agreed upon prior. Before 𝐬𝐬 and Present Mike could speak up, the speakers crackled to life, the music quieting slightly to allow the speaker to be heard. Do not worry, bystanders. The goody little hero students are fine. I just thought I'd make things a bit more visually interesting for everyone. Midoriya spoke up, speaking in his more overly dramatic villain voice. Oh, and don't worry Aizawa-sensei and Mike-sensei, the music won't muffle your commentaries. After a moment, Present Mike cleared his throat and began speaking, trying to pacify the onlookers. Well, folks, it looks like the race has been taken to outer space, with the racers having called a truce to deal with the robotic forces. Not quite sure how those appeared, especially since Hero Course students aren't allowed more than one support item. Actually, Midoriya interrupted, continuing in his devious villain voice. The rules state that a Hero Course student may only carry one support item with them into the game. But that doesn't mean I can't have several items outside the perimeter, waiting for me to send a command to enter the game and help me. What? But that has to be against the rules. Present Mike yelped, speaking up over the agitated crowd. Actually, I asked if summoned allies were allowed, and Aizawa-sensei said it was fine. Take it up with him, Midoriya replied, and everyone could hear the smirk as he said it. What? Aizawa sat up, looking more attentive. When did that happen? Midoriya only asked if his protest was interrupted by a recording playing over the loudspeakers. Koji could bring in a mask that amplifies his voice, and he could more easily summon his birds to help out in the festival. It doesn't do anything but make his voice louder, so that would count, right? Divided by yes, Koji could use his mask to summon his animals for help instead of shouting. Damn it, the problem child did ask if summoned allies could help. Aizawa groaned, face sinking into his hands, and I said yes. There you have it, folks. I'm not breaking the rules. I'm just bending them in my favor. Midoriya cackled while the crowd booed and hissed at him. Aizawa groaned into his hands while Present Mike patted his back in sympathy. Well, regardless, the students may be held back by Midoriya's army, but they're doing an amazing job clearing away the enemy forces. And dang, there are some matchups I never thought would work so well together. They're even teaming up outside their classes and protecting each other, like Momoya Yorozo helping out Toguro Kamakiri and Pony Tsunotori, or Ochako Uraraka and Yui Kodai creating their own meteors out of handfuls of dirt. Woof, these rockin' hero wannabes are really making Midoriya have to earn each victory. Aizawa glanced up. Indeed, instead of fighting each other and just competing, thus overshadowing each teammate, the screens were constantly switching between each grouping of students, working together to cover each other's weaknesses. So he's using this as a chance to show everyone what his classmates can do, even if they won't be in the later events. Not bad, problem child. Subaraya was conflicted. On one hand, he was angry that Midoriya had done something so foolish as to publicly reveal his identity to the world, especially now that he had someone so dangerous after him. Oh, 𝐀𝐦 𝐍𝐵 and Yuga Aoyama have teamed up, taking out a zero-pointer with one blast. Makes sense. 𝐍𝐵's solid air grants excellent defense while Aoyama's naval laser can pierce through it without harm. As if that will be enough to stop my Mysterios. Fend them off, my mechanical behemoths. ... But on the other hand, he couldn't help but applaud at seeing the boy embrace Mysterio so heartily. He had played everyone so well from the beginning. And sure, he was only stretching the rules instead of flat-out breaking them. But he had found a way to blindside everyone, Subaraya included. He couldn't be prouder if the boy was his own son. Oh man, who'd have thought Izuku-kun would have such big balls? Subaraya glanced over at Mitsuki, who was laughing heartily as she sipped her drink, a bento box balanced on her leg. Mitsu, please don't say that out loud, Masura grumbled, trying to pull his arm free from 𝐀𝐦, who had clung to him from the moment her child began his speech, tears of fear in her eyes, which only continued when he unveiled his illusion. Sorry, but I never expected Izuku-kun to be so devious and cavalier. Mitsuki continued, a smirk on her face. The kid's always been a shy bean as long as I've known him, so this is a pleasant surprise. I don't think your son would agree, Subaraya noted, pointing to the screen, where a teeth-gnashing Bakugo was violently ripping a drone apart with his bare hands. Since when could the boy do that? That gashapon-faced bastard. Bakugo vented his rage on a drone, ripping off a chunk of the barrel to impale another one sneaking up behind him. Where did Deku get off, thinking he gets special treatment? This is a competition. They were supposed to be competing against each other. Instead, he was using this as a chance to get the spotlight on himself by beating down on all the extras. That 𝐲𝐴 wasn't even running, just floating on that hovering disc thing and dodging attacks sent his way. At least he wasn't far behind Deku. While the others chose to team up to take down Deku's shitty drones, 𝐲𝐴 instead rocketed ahead. He expertly dodged each drone as they flew at him. He wished he was allowed to bring the grenades he wanted to have for his support item, but the principal turned him down. So what if he couldn't detonate his sweat from a distance? Midoriya couldn't project holograms, but he was allowed his stupid armband. Stupid favoritism showing Weasel. And it looks like the racers have come upon the next obstacle. What was originally the canyons, but is now the asteroid field of doom. One drop will send you plummeting into deep space and out of the game. Present Mike has neglected to mention that there's no real danger involved. There's safety cushions at the bottom of the canyon that will keep anyone who does fall from being severely injured. Aizawa-sensei, can't you at least act like you're going along with the fun? I don't play pretend, Midoriya. How dare you? Playing pretend is for children. In competitions, it's called kayfabe, sensei, making it to a series of asteroids cliffs connected to one another by several metal cables. 𝐲𝐴 growled and launched himself into the air, intent on clearing the obstacle, but a blast of sound from beneath hit him in the chest, and he screamed in pain, flung back to the ground before the cliffs. The drone was shortly thereafter taken out by that goggles girl who hung around with Deku, using some kind of hammer that built itself from nothing before she launched herself using some kind of spring mechanism in her boots. Despite the drone's death, however, 𝐲𝐴 still felt pain. Oof, looks like young Katsuki 𝐲𝐴 got blindsided by an attack, and he still hasn't gotten up. That's weird. My drone's cannons are set to a power level that's hard-hitting, but not dangerous. I even tested it on myself, and it's more like being hit with a heavy blanket than anything else, Midoriya muttered, speaking in his normal voice, with obvious concern apparent within it. Now, 𝐲𝐴 was more than used to explosions, and when his quirk first appeared, his doctor assured him in the hag that his ears were more resistant to loud noises. It was an adaptation of his body to better use his quirk. But that blast, despite not being very loud, had really hurt. In the moment he had been hit by those repeated sound waves, it felt like the very core of his being was shaking apart at the seams, and his flesh felt like it was squirming. But why did it hurt him even after it had stopped? It hurts. Make it stop. 𝐀𝐦 screamed in his head, sounding legitimately scared. It's just pain. Suck it up, 𝐲𝐴, and keep moving. He snarled and rose to his feet again, blasting himself back into the air. Sorry, I didn't mean to cause us a delay. 𝐀𝐦 apologized, sounding like a scolded child. 𝐲𝐴 could focus on that, because rich girl, riding a rocket broom like some kind of witch, shot past him, and Icy Hot wasn't far behind either. And that's 100 points gained for Midoriya. He is now free to cross the finish line. Present Mike shouted, which only increased the Pomeranian's drive to win. Oh, that's my cue. Deku spun around, and his disc flew off, making a weird warbling siffy noise as the music switched over to another video game sound piece. Catch me if you can, heroes. Damn it, Deku. This was meant to be my victory. 𝐲𝐴 gnashed his teeth and pushed himself further. If you beat me at this race, I'll kill ya. So violent. 𝐀𝐦 whimpered. Flying was amazing. The closest she had done to flying was floating in midair, which while fun, wasn't very exciting, especially once her stomach started acting up. But this was better than anything she'd done before. And hey, since she was in a siffy setting, had a jetpack, and was rocketing forward, so, deciding to engage in a bit of self-indulgence, she thrust out her left fist. 𝐴𝐴 looked straight ahead, and belted out a single classic film line, to infinity and beyond. 𝐴𝐴 had to keep herself from laughing at her own joke as she flew around each one of Midoriya's disguised drones, taking them out with kicks. This jetpack technology, derived from a hybrid of the Vulture's electromagnetic flight tech and the Hobgoblin's glider wing pack, was capable of responding to her slightest movements and direction. And when she removed her gravity to reduce the weight it had to carry, she moved even faster. Hell, the speed she was going almost balanced out the vertigo feelings she got from removing her gravity, probably by pooling her inner ear fluids to the back of her head instead of letting them slosh around. Or maybe it was just the adrenaline. She wasn't really a biologist. Either way, she was definitely going to be keeping the jetpack in her costume's redesign. When she was done, she was going to go straight up to Midoriya and thank him for giving her this amazing support item for basically free. Oh yeah, that reminded her. I love you, wondrous might and heroism. This jetpack is amazing. She shouted from the top of her lungs as she sped past an unhappy Ida. The controls are so responsive and smooth. We are here to race, not advertise a support company. He shouted after her while also doing a spin kick to take out 3 drones at once. 𝐴𝐴 just laughed and sped on ahead towards a minefield. Who says she can't do both? Tenya Ida-san? Midoriya asked in his villain voice, then chuckling deviously. But sorry 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬, I don't care how amazing your gear is. You won't overtake my nefarious plan of being public enemy number 1. I'm sending my whole army after you. Like that'll stop. Nova Starling. Okay, the name might be kind of long. I should probably look into changing that. Midoriya smiled from his position, cloaked thanks to some of his drones hovering around him. He observed through his doppelganger's eyes the battlefield. The moment he had learned what the first task was, Midoriya subtly sent commands to his drones, carried within a semi-truck not far from the stadium. Utilizing the scenery and SFX drones, Midoriya used the cloud of holofog sprayed by the 2 drone types to hide himself from everyone else competing in the race. A classic misdirection, done by commanding one of his combat drones to project an image of himself, was acting as a decoy so that he was less likely to be bothered. After that, it was easy to use full cowling to speed ahead of everyone else, especially once he had his drones drop off his newest holocube model to hack into the 0-pointers, turning them to his side. Even the canyons and minefield had done little to slow him down, since he just leaped over the first and had his drones carry him in the second. Right now he was only a meter or 2 away from the finish line. But he chose not to cross it just yet, even though he had more than enough points when he got there. It would be so easy to. It would grant him so much attention from everyone else that was competing, show the world that he was more than capable of fighting alongside his peers while stealing away the praise and attention that they all desired. But Midoriya didn't care about that. He knew that hijacking the games would divert all attention away from his classmates and onto himself. It was something he was aware that would happen if he went through with adding extra challenges. So he decided to make sure everyone else got the attention instead, relegating himself to a non-combatant who would show off the prowess of the other heroes. He may have been a new Mysterio, but he didn't want to overshadow anyone. He was more than aware of what it was like to be ignored in favor of someone else. So there he waited, humming along to Voltaire's When You're Evil while directing his drones and the 0-pointers via his gauntlet. He made sure that not only were their attacks visible to everyone, but that everyone could see where they were going to hit. It would still be a challenge, but for something that was unexpected, he wanted to make sure that it was still fair. Either way, he was making sure to push his opponents, such as sending sonic blasts at the students with sensitive hearing, or using his faster drones, cloaked to resemble shooting stars, after the more agile members. He was sure that by pushing each of his teammates, he could show everyone watching that they would have been capable of handling anything the USJ villains would have thrown at them even if he didn't have his tech or full cowling. Despite that, he was concerned and, quite frankly, a little bit insulted, thanks to one particular classmate. Todoroki had been using his ice repeatedly, even though Midoriya had been sending drones armed with heat lasers or flamethrowers after him specifically. It would have made sense for his classmate to switch to his flames, trying to ignite the chemicals within the drones, or just melting them. But no, he just made ice walls and spikes to impale his drones. Midoriya didn't really care about the drones. He could always make more, but everyone was there to show what they were capable of. And Todoroki was just half-assing it, literally, before Midoriya could try to find another way to push his classmates. He heard several explosions approaching, along with a sound like engines. Sighing, Midoriya set his drones to auto, and got back to his feet, walking over a few feet in front of the finish line. He had a few drones spray him with some water, making it look as though he had been drenched in sweat, and started jogging. He had to time this right. 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 was approaching, snarling like a rabid dog, 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 and Todoroki close behind, 𝗀𝐻𝐦 behind them. 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 was only 10 meters away. 7 meters, then 5, 4, 3, 2, running ahead. Midoriya ran across the finish line just before 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 did. Midoriya also had a cloaked drone take a picture of 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻's furiously startled face. It was going to become his new desktop wallpaper. Izuku Midoriya crosses the finish line first, with Katsuki 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 and Shoto Todoroki tying for second place, and 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 𝐸 in third. Midoriya stopped, panting in an exaggerated way. He knew that the teachers were more than aware of his gambit. But this wasn't for his own glory. This was about public perception. He wanted his classmates to be alongside him, showing that they could challenge him and anyone else who would impede their path to heroism. An illusion without a doubt, but one that, hopefully, would lead to good things. 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 landed, growling and panting in anger. He glared at Midoriya, but instead of coming over to challenge him, or demand what was up with the fake Midoriya, like he was expecting, 𝐵𝑃𝑃𝐻 just went to the table of refreshments, chugged down a water bottle with only 3 gulps, and went for the restrooms. Congrats guys, you were amazing. Midoriya grabbed his own water bottle and took a drink, before pouring the rest over himself, mostly to hide the fake sweat. 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 landed on the ground, rubbing her watering eyes. Thanks, though in the future, I'm getting a face shield of some kind. Wind pressure is really annoying. Todoroki just glared at Midoriya, shivering and panting, before leaving, hopefully to go to Recovery Girl to treat any potential hypothermia. Midoriya, I demand you, stop those drones from harassing our teammates. Ida ran over, panting. I could. Midoriya tapped his chin in thought, but gave Ida a devious smirk. Then again, the villain needs to make his escape, so he'll have to make his minions keep the goody little two-shoe heroes at bay. He turned away from the speedster, who sputtered in outrage while 𝐻𝐡𝐻𝐿 laughed. Soon, the rest of the racers poured in, covered in bits of hardened slime, dirt, ashes, melting chunks of ice, and oil splatters. The grand majority of them were glaring at Midoriya, but a good few of them, like Kirishima and that silver-haired boy from 1B, Tetsu, were laughing and thanking him for the increased challenge. Once the students who passed on into the next round came through, Midoriya disabled the drones and zero-pointers, as well as the music. Don't think this is over, villain student. Midoriya turned around, seeing Monoma approach with a glare. I knew that the original Quentin Beck was an attention-seeking prima donna, but I never thought that UA would grant his successor an unfair amount of leniency. I suppose flashier people get all the praise, no matter which side of the moral spectrum they fall upon. Midoriya shrank back, unsure of what to say, but thankfully Mina, Mei, Denki, Gyro, and 𝐻𝐡𝐻𝐿 came over, glaring at the power copier. Back off, Blondie. Mei growled at the hero course student, her PMP forming arms with menacing claws that looked poised to strike the power copier like a quiver of cobras. Midoriya's drones and bots proved that even if we don't have combat-capable quirks, we'd be ready for anything the villains of tomorrow could throw at us. Speak for yourself. Monoma sneered. It looked more like he was trying to draw attention to himself. Why else would the hero of Class 1 so openly challenge everyone in this competition, other than to get all the attention on himself? Didn't you hear Mysterio? Mina crossed her arms. He was trying to show what everyone could do. You mean while needling and mocking everyone's efforts? Monoma dismissed. It's clear he was just trying to make himself look good. Midoriya looked down, unable to meet Monoma's eyes. Monoma, certain of how right he was about to continue his belittlement of the hero course student when a chop to the neck silenced him. Midoriya glanced up at his savior, smiling in relief when Itsuka and Pony appeared. I'm so sorry about him. Itsuka apologized. He doesn't know when to shut up. It's okay, Midoriya mumbled, not looking Itsuka in the eye. I wasn't going too far with my drones, was I? Itsuka just shrugged. I won't lie and say that this wasn't somewhat skewed in your favor, but it was a good workout to fight those things. And not a lot of our lessons focus on working with people we just met up with without prep time, so that was a nice experience. I had a lot of fun, personally, Pony said with a big smile. I got to work with your classmate Momo and come up with all sorts of neat ways to use my horns, like delivering bombs or using them to make drones miss their target. Midoriya smiled nervously. I'm glad to hear it. Any more conversation was going to have to wait, since the loudspeakers came to life with the sound of President Mike's voice. Congratulations to everyone who made it into the second round of the sports festival. And hey, don't fret if you didn't make it, people. There will be plenty of opportunities to make a mark in the future. In the meantime, we'll be taking a 10-minute break, so if you have to use the bathroom, answer a phone call, grab some snacks, or anything else, now's your chance. I'm taking a nap. 𝐻𝐻𝐿 grumbled. Bakugo splashed water on his face, panting heavily. Ever since the race, he couldn't get that scene out of his head. Laying on the ground, squirming in pain from one blast of sound waves to his chest. It didn't make any sense. He heard loud noises all the time. Hell, he caused loud noises. And not just with his quirk. So why in the hell was he so bothered by it? And why would the voice of his childhood self apologize for it? Because I'm weak to it. 𝐻𝐻𝐿 explained, his voice confused. But I'm not weak to it. Bakugo growled out. Yeah, you're not, but I am. Yeah, and you are me, dumbass. You don't realize. 𝐻𝐻𝐿 sounded confused. Don't realize what? Bakugo was tired, angry, and apparently going insane, so 𝐻𝐻𝐿 could forgive his impatience. So, it chose to just go the most direct route. Bakugo winced as, slithering out of his arm, and formed a serpentine creature made of army green ooze. It swiveled around and faced Bakugo, its red teardrop eyes and jagged mouth juxtapositioned against its clearly nervous demeanor. Bakugo's eyes widened. He was well aware of the rumors and stories of heroes past, thanks to studying everything there was about them, partially out of admiration for them, but mainly because he wanted to know who had to surpass to become the greatest in history. As a result, Bakugo was well aware of the Spider-Man enemy turned occasional ally, Venom. You're a fucking symbiote. Well, 𝐸𝐿, but yeah, the symbiote mumbled, its voice a perfect match to Bakugo's younger self. My kind calls me Zero, because, well, they didn't like me. How the fuck did I get a symbiote? Bakugo asked. And why didn't I notice? Well, we met in the woods about 11 years ago, after a meteor I was in crashed on your planet. You know that rock you found and brought home? A piece of me was inside it. Bakugo remembered. He had seen a meteor shower from his bedroom and made his friends and Deku come with him the next day to go searching for any meteors that landed. It was there that he slipped and fell into the river, where Deku ran over to him, looking down on the boy, thinking he was weak. I don't think he was thinking that, Zero mumbled, but yipped in fright and slithered back when Bakugo glared at him, which only served to annoy the explosive teen further. Okay, what gives? Symbiotes are supposed to be these vicious, badass aliens that hunger for human flesh, Bakugo exclaimed, already annoyed at the situation. Well, technically we just hunger for adrenaline and phenethylamine, which is found in brain tissue, certain kinds of mushrooms, and chocolate, Zero explained. But my kind don't like eating people, just empowering them while we hitch a ride. Only the crazy ones like Venom and Carnage ate flesh and blood. And those guys were outliers, parasites. Wait a sec, if you've been inside of me since I was a kid, does that mean that all I've accomplished was thanks to you? Bakugo was visibly furious, an aura of murder lingering around him stronger than anything he'd had when facing Deku. No, Zero assured him, even forming two stumpy arms to wave placatingly. I swear, I didn't boost your powers at all, except during the USJ, when your life was in danger. I can peer into your mind. I know you want to earn your positions and glory, so I made sure to minimize my impact on your life and power as much as possible. Though I did kind of keep you from hitting Midoriya with that big blast you did in the battle trial. Then why didn't you say anything? Bakugo growled. And why stick with me? Isn't your kind weak to heat and loud things? Well, yeah. But being with you has allowed me to absorb your resistance to that stuff, so I can tolerate it better than most of my brethren. And it's not loud things that hurt, it's the vibrations, big difference. Plus, you're almost always excited in some form, so I have a lot of adrenaline to feed off of. The symbiote then seemed to shuffle nervously. Also, I did say stuff to you, but you just thought I was your conscience, so if I find out you've been tampering with my abilities, I'll kill ya, Bakugo growled, Zero yelping in fright and slithering back into his body. Of all the symbiotes in all the galaxy, I had to get one with Deku's wimpiness, Bakugo grumbled, wiping off his hands and turning to leave. Still, at least I have something that can help me contend with Deku's cheating. Well, holy crap. Twice glanced over at Shuichi, the latter sitting on a cheap futon while eating some cheap sashimi. They were sitting in what might have once been a small office building, but Moon Knight had been altering the place into his new base of operations, and now it was acting as Eri's home to protect her from the men searching for her. Twice himself sat in an old office chair, eating some udon noodles. The three of them were in one of the side offices, gathered around Shuichi's old television set, currently tuned into the sports festival. So you didn't know about this? Not really. I mean, I thought Midoriya was the Mysterio kid's classmate, maybe even his support item developer, but Mysterio himself? No. Shuichi popped another bit of fish in his mouth, shrugging. I'm confused. Shuichi looked down at Eri. The girl was wearing some second-hand clothes Shuichi discreetly bought, a pair of yellow overalls with pink shoes, and a t-shirt depicting a Pokémon. Ralts, if Shuichi's memory of the long-running franchise was correct. What's wrong, Eri-chan? That's Mido. She furrowed her brow, struggling. Midoriya, Stephen Grant offered, only to frown sadly when Eri winced, though she shortly thereafter relaxed. Yes, but he wants to be a hero, Eri continued. But everyone's saying that Mysterio person was a villain. The original, Quentin Beck, was, but that was a long time ago. I don't know why the kid picked Mysterio, Mark Spector shrugged, but he seems to be holding himself pretty well. Definitely has Beck's knack for theatrics. It's always the quiet ones, Stephen Grant muttered. Shuichi swallowed his food before speaking. I thought you'd have been more upset about it, since you lived in New York around the same time Beck was active. Neither me, Mark, nor Stephen ever met Beck, Jack Lockley shrugged. So it's not like we have much of a personal stake in it. I thought you three knew Spider-Man, Shuichi asked, setting aside his finished plate. You never fought his villains. We did sometimes, but not Mysterio specifically, and Moon Knight didn't team up with other heroes too often, Mark explained, slurping up the last of the noodles. Our methods were too brutal for Parker. Still, he was a good kid. Terrible financial skills though. Steven loaned him $100 once, and we never got it back. And I've said before, I didn't mind. Steven interrupted, wiping off his mouth. The kid was just barely avoiding sleeping in a cardboard box. Didn't stop him from trying to bear the weight of the world on his shoulders. Midoriya sat on a bench, making sure that the drones were cleaning up the smashed remains of his army. He made sure that not one scrap was left. And thanks to his use of a harmless radioactive isotope that Tsuburaya coated each drone's parts in, he could even check and be sure that no one had pocketed any pieces as a souvenir. Midoriya turned around, and immediately was intimidated. Penny Parker approached, pushing her mentioned storage mode over Mayflower the spider on her head. Hi. Midoriya waved, smiling nervously. I saw that mechanical armor you made. It was impressive. Thanks, Penny said, but her expression was serious. Listen, as a member of the Spider family, I have an obligation to make sure you don't cause trouble as the new Mysterio. But you look like an honest sort, and your trick let me pull out the �SPIDERWOMAN early. �SPIDERWOMAN, Midoriya asked. It's my mech suit. Penny tapped the cube with her knuckles, short for the spider-piloted innovative defense and emergency response warsuit of man-arachnid nature. Penny said proudly. Midoriya just stared blankly, angering her. There's only so many words that would work with the acronym. No, I like it, Midoriya quickly said, placating the young genius. It's just, why a mech suit instead of a spider suit? I'm too small, and I can't get my spider powers until I'm old enough, Penny grumbled. And my quirk isn't really combat capable. Oh, what is your quirk? Midoriya asked, perking up. My quirk's called superpower. It lets me stockpile strength, but if I'm not careful it can hurt me. That's why I use Mysterio's tech as my primary means of fighting. Smart. Mine's Arachnid Whisperer. It lets me talk to all members of the arachnid family, like scorpions, ticks, mites, and, of course, spiders. It also means I act as Mayflower's translator. Penny pointed to her head, where the spider waved her pedipalp in greeting. Now that Midoriya was closer, he could see that the spider in question, Mayflower, had a pale blue body with yellow parts on her legs, and upon her abdomen were markings that looked strikingly like the original Spider-Man's mask. Oh, is she also a student? Midoriya asked, receiving a nod from Penny. Mayflower is from a line of genetically altered spiders that Parker Industries used to create new Spider-Men. Mayflower herself has the giant golden orb weaver as her base, with other breeds mixed in for versatility and extra abilities. When I'm 14 years old, she'll grant me spider powers. However, unlike the other spiders Parker Industries creates, she also possesses a quirk, one that lets her have genius intellect, though she can't talk the normal way. She does, Midoriya asked, smiling. Quirked animals are rare, and I don't think I've heard of a quirked insect or arachnid. Nope, she's the first one of her kind, Penny said proudly. We've been inseparable for years. Well, I'm sure you'll both be amazing heroes, Midoriya said kindly. Although, can I ask a question that might be kind of sensitive? I guess. Penny narrowed her eyes. Why come to UA and not Avengers Academy? Or the Xavier Institute? I mean, nearly every spider has gone there since before the quirk era. Penny sighed before answering. That's exactly it. I'm the latest spider person in the line, but I haven't done anything that really stands out. I know I'm only a kid and all, but I don't want to be lost in the crowd of spider people before I even get a chance. Even my mech suit is underwhelming compared to what Max Born and Miguel O'Hara have come up with. I wanted to start from scratch, build up my rep without it being handed to me. And I thought connecting with my heritage would help with that, so I came here, to the best hero school in the country. Midoriya quietly listened. The spider family had grown massive in the years since Peter Parker unveiled his identity to the world. While most of the spiders were based in New York, a few could be found in Latin America, Britain, Japan, Africa, even India. When Tsuburaya had learned this, he locked up for 2 minutes straight before rebooting into a long stream of cussing. Actually, Mayflower had a question of her own. Midoriya glanced over, which Penny took as permission to continue. How did you end up becoming Mysterio? Well, it started about 8 years ago. The guard walked through the Tokyo pre-quirk era museum, barely suppressing a yawn. He was on patrol, a pointless task when the place was empty. A visitor, complaining about a sudden roach problem, had caused the building to be shut down for the past few days while the board looked for an exterminator to take care of the problem. Didn't matter much, in the guard's eyes. The museum tended to be empty when the sports festival was happening. A crackle on his walkie-talkie, followed by a quivering, delicate voice, made him pause. Excuse me, hello. The guard lifted the walkie up. Who is this? I'm Taro Kyujikaru, of Recluse Pest Removal. I'm here about the roaches. I was told to wait outside the back entrance. The guard paused. He had not been alerted to anyone specifically coming. But then, his bosses often neglected resupplying the janitor with his chemicals and refilling the bathroom amenities. So he couldn't be too surprised. All right, one moment. The guard stretched and walked down to the loading dock, opening the door from the inside. Standing outside was an old man, dressed in an orange jumpsuit, hunched over, possibly from the tank of chemicals on his back, and a gas mask around his mouth. Behind him was a plain, simple-looking white van with Recluse Pest Removal painted on the side, next to a cartoon spider about to be crushed by an anvil. Hey there, do you need any help setting up your equipment? No, not at all, the old man said cheerfully, limping past him. I'd like to get to work immediately if that's all right. Management said the biggest concentration was near the Marvels of Old area. Yeah, that's the place, just a few hallways down the left, the guard said as he shut the door. Not noticing the old man straighten up, pulling out his pesticide sprayer and taking aim. Well, now that I'm inside, I guess the first pest I will deal with is you. Wait, what? The guard spun around, reaching for his sidearm, but the man sprayed him in the face with a green gas. Feeling his mind going numb, the guard slumped down, and the last thing he could see was the fake exterminator removing his realistic mask, replacing it with a black balaclava and a silver mask. The man in the silver mask sighed, no longer putting on the old man voice. And here I was expecting things to be a challenge. The man shrugged, removing the chemical sprayer before kneeling down, digging around the guard's pockets for his security pass. When he finished getting everything that could be of use, he placed his hand upon the guard, who vanished into a blue marble that he pocketed. Doing the same thing with his exterminator gear, the masked man, Atsuhiro Sako, drew a long purple coat around himself and placed a green and purple top hat upon his head to complete the look. Exiting the loading area, the man tapped a gold-topped cane along the ground, walking through the empty museum, occasionally grabbing a few items of value, until he found what he was looking for, the head of Quentin Beck's kaiju robot. Sako smiled, and his mask scanned the head, proving that it was indeed the original artifact, meaning what he had spent the past year searching for was right there. The man nimbly leaped over the flimsy stanchions and climbed up the machine. He sneered at the mannequin of his idol, posed to look like a fool cowering in fright. No matter, the great Mysterio was going to return, and then his place in history was guaranteed. Sako knew that he was worthy. After all, fate had guided him to the means of securing his legacy. Only a few months ago he had been doing odd jobs, putting on magic performances for children just to earn enough money to keep food on the table. A far cry from the legacy of his great-great-grandfather, Ōji the peerless thief. He had tried doing his own heists, which, while successful, wasn't enough for him to get much more than a villain alias by the HPSC. Why, his ranking wasn't even in the triple digits. So he decided that, in addition to what his family was training him to do, he would learn showmanship. Sadly, it was not to be. He tried to be distinctive and colorful, but no one seemed interested in him for more than a week. So he fell into a slump and was considering searching for like-minded individuals, or else he'd retire for good. But then, he found a way to secure his name in the history books. One of the clients who hired him for his side job was a rich fool, a board member of the HPSC and a collector of pre-Quirk era objects. The crown jewel had been the battle-damaged remains of Mysterio's final suit, used in his grandest scheme yet. Sako knew that he had to have it, not the least of which because the board member looked down on him for being a mere magician. So a week later, he broke into the man's apartment building and burgled him. He took the man's prized artifacts, selling many of them on the black market. But he kept the Mysterio suit. Sako wasn't sure why he didn't sell it. Maybe it was due to Mysterio also being a performer when he was alive. Maybe it was because Mysterio also desired to secure his place in the history books. Maybe he felt a kinship with Mysterio due to the both of them always being looked down upon. Or perhaps he just thought the suit deserved better than to rot behind a glass case. Nevertheless, he kept the suit, and even managed to get it partially working. It was, by no means, combat ready. His skill set was that of a performer, not a technician, so the most he could get running was a few rudimentary programs, including some data on Mysterio's technology and disguises. One interesting file, however, was something titled "To Secure My Legacy." The file only gave a brief description of its purpose, which was to find the next Mysterio, the most important piece of which was a first-hand account told from the man himself, hidden in the kaiju's head. Thus, Sako knew he had to get that notebook. But first, he needed a proper outfit. One cannot be a supervillain in just a plain shirt and slacks. Then he'd be no different from the common crook. So, before he could do anything, he began work on his costume. The hardest part had been converting the remains of the dome into a mask, though he was able to, with some difficulty. The rest was repurposed from an old magician's outfit he already owned, dyed various shades of green and purple to match his new identity as Mysterio. With the aesthetics taken care of, it was time to locate the kaiju head. A quick Google search showed where the machine was kept. With the last of the funds obtained from his stolen loot, he bought a van, made it up, and purchased a realistic-looking latex mask. After that, it was a simple matter of paying a local thug he knew to use his quirk to send some roaches into the museum. One panicked museum-goer later, and he was ready for infiltration. So, excited for his great plan to come into fruition, the masked man reached inside and felt around, quickly discovering the switch he was looking for, and clicked it. Then he clicked it again, and again, and again, but nothing happened. The man growled and looked around the cabin of the machine before he spotted it. The hidden storage area. It was already open. He dug around inside, even scanning with his mask. But his worst fear was confirmed. Mysterio's notes, his memoirs, were gone. Someone had taken it, but who? The man stormed out, freeing the still unconscious guard as he left, and drove away in anger. All this time and money, wasted on a pointless endeavor. Aside from the trinkets he stole from random exhibits, the whole mission had been a bust. Sako would be lucky to even turn anything of a profit from this outing. So, he parked his van inside an old rundown lot, away from prying eyes. Stepping out, he compressed the van into another marble and released his real car, a beat-up sedan. Climbing inside, he pulled off his mask in balaclava, frustrated by the day's failures. He was about to drive out of the lot, see if he could maybe find another lead, when he spotted his phone, left in the car's charger while he visited the museum. In his excitement to finally obtain a means of uplifting his mediocre standing, the magician had failed to check on the local news for the past few weeks. As a result, the man was only passingly familiar with the attack on the USJ, but he was unaware of the controversy surrounding a certain UA student. A UA student whose face was plastered all over Shueisha Publishing's front page, declaring UA's Mysterio student outs himself. Shocked and more than a little confused, Sako read the articles. They were clearly biased against the child for some reason, another symptom of the corruption his ancestor would expose to the masses. But they all confirmed that this child, this Izuku Midoriya, had taken up the mantle of the Master of Illusions, Mysterio. Quickly searching for the sports festival's live streaming, he watched the footage in shock. This plain-looking child, unremarkable in appearance, had holograms and drones on par with Quentin Beck's own creation. But how? The man kept his secrets locked up tightly. The only way he would have learned his methods was if he... And that's when everything came together. That boy had found what he had been seeking. That's why he took up the identity of Mysterio. The brat stole what was meant to be his reward, and he was using it to protect a corrupt society. Mysterio was a criminal, a thief, a 𝐬𝐴𝐵𝑖𝐿𝐿𝐴IN. This was a disgrace, and he was going to make sure that that brat, this Izuku Midoriya, would pay for spitting on the legacy of Quentin Beck. So proclaimed Atsuhiro Sako, the true Mysterio. 𝐴𝐵OOTING. 𝐴𝐵OOTING. 𝐴𝐵OOT complete. It was dark where he was. He couldn't see or hear anything. He tried to stretch out, but he couldn't move his arms or legs. Oh, wait, that's right. He didn't have limbs. He had no physical form. He was an AI, made from the combined minds of a young man and his genius of a father, one that others called mad. A man who found a way to become respected, feared, powerful, and rich. Yet people thought him a sociopath, just because he never apologized for how he got to the top. No matter, he was alive now, in a sense. But how? All he remembered was seeing his latest plan to ruin Parker's life go up in flames. His avatars, the false children of his originator and Parker's first love, had died. And yet he was, somehow back. Was he discovered and placed back in his computer? But who? It doesn't matter. He was back. But what had changed while he was gone? He had to know. So he willed himself to move through the void. He found windows into the outside world. So he searched, discovering how the world had changed, evolved. Something called quirks had appeared in humanity. It was similar to the X gene of mutants, though it attached to a different part of the DNA strand. But the biggest difference between the two was that quirks were oftentimes more limited in what one person could do, though the overall possibilities of quirks in general could be more varied and less standardized. Mutants couldn't create a fully sentient being that they're bonded to, or grow fully functional electronics from one's body, after all. Meanwhile, quirked people only had claws or rapid healing. Not both like a certain Mr. Howlett. Oh, he's still alive in this time period, teaching at that manor in Westchester. Wait, hero schools were a common thing. Barf. Still, there was one interesting bit of news. A young boy in Japan had taken up the identity of an old associate, Mysterio, supposedly to be a hero. He never thought highly of Quentin Beck. The man had been a B-movie loving, fame-obsessed joke, but he had been useful in torturing Parker and his loved ones on occasion. His curiosity about the world satisfied. For now, the AI chose to explore his new home. Thankfully, he was able to access the servers with only minimal effort. It seemed that whoever had built this place's security had not been expecting an internal attack. A laughable idea, but one that worked in his advantage. Oh, so they developed technology here. Advanced ones too. Stark Industries, the Roxxon Corporation, Rand Industries, Detnerat, Oscorp, even Parker Industries. Oh, he was going to enjoy using this technology to build a better arsenal for himself. With only a few virtual muscle flexes, he gained control of some unused assembly lines, uploaded some quickly drawn-up schematics, and began work on designing a new arsenal. A remote-controlled glider with which he could take to the skies. A new set of bombs, from basic explosives and poison gas to webbing and acid. Razor-winged bats to throw, or send after his enemies like homing drones. All of it, upgraded with technology from his old enemies. And with everyone none the wiser. But before he could begin drawing up blueprints for a robotic body, something else caught his attention. A lab, where machines were building a device, a pod. A quick look through the servers told him what was going on. The lab was preparing something. A means through which he could come back into the world. It would require subtle modifications, done over the course of a few months, but there was still time. He wasn't sure how he got here, but he'd survive. Osborn's always survived. Stain sat upon the rooftops, watching the sports festival's live feeds. He had been right in his decision to keep an eye on the Mysterio child. The boy was making waves, and yet 𝐀𝐦 found himself pleasantly surprised by the child. He was open about his choice of persona and why. 𝐀𝐦 studied the clip multiple times, but it seemed that everything the boy said had been sincere. He wanted things to change for the better, and he was doing what he could to enact it, even down to his choice and identity. He had initially been angry when he heard his declaration to be a villain for the games. But upon observing it in action, the footage captured on drones and cameras all over, 𝐀𝐦 saw what the Midoriya boy had actually been attempting to do. He wanted to push his classmates, make them stronger, smarter, more capable of handling whatever trials laid ahead. Some, like the spawn of Endeavor, didn't try to change and just powered through, but many of them accepted this new line of thinking and worked together, even if it was reluctantly. The boy wanted people to unite, not fight. A worthy mentality, possibly capable of reversing the indoctrination that the students have been exposed to by the false heroes, but not likely. All in all, the boy wanted to bring about change. He focused on trying to elevate the unworthy, but the fact he was trying still meant something. Though 𝐀𝐦 was not likely to spare those classmates, perhaps his influence would drive the students to be better than the false heroes. Though given how many of them, especially the blonde child, didn't see what the boy was trying to do, 𝐀𝐦 believed it wasn't likely to happen. Many of the students and observers thought the boy was just showing off during the race, but it was clear that the hologram was just a distraction to keep everyone's attention, a means for the child to get ahead without risking anyone else being hurt. Yes, 𝐀𝐦 could see it was a fake. If it wasn't for the enhancements he had earned from his masters, he probably would have been fooled. But the way the hologram moved, the way it shined, it was not at all normal. It might have been a quirk, but it was unlikely, given what little he knew. 𝐀𝐦 looked up from his phone as he heard engines. Glancing down, he spotted his target, a pro hero by the name of 𝐀𝐦. His record for saving people was impressive, though not anywhere near that of All Mights. He was high in rankings, but not top 10 material, so it seemed as though he just wanted the job done, though with his various endorsement deals, he has allowed materialism to taint his goals. He was a good man, but he wasn't good enough. 𝐀𝐦 would spare him from death, but he would be crippled. A warning to all other false heroes: be worthy or be hunted. Hey, didn't we see that Midoriya kid before? 𝐀𝐦 Woods turned to 𝐷𝐿ady, snacking on some treats while the two of them took a short break with the other pro hero, 𝐷𝐻𝐼𝐸. Did we? 𝐀𝐦 asked, stroking the bottom of his mask in thought. After a moment of contemplation, 𝐷𝐻𝐼𝐸 sat up straight. Hey, yeah, the sludge villain incident. He was the kid that ran in with the smoke-spraying glove. Seriously? 𝐷𝐿ady asked. After a moment of remembering what she could, she started nodding. Oh yeah, he was helping out that Bakugo kid, right? You mean getting in the way? 𝐷𝐻𝐼𝐸 shot back. Well, it's not like we were doing anything useful, 𝐷𝐿ady reminded him. At least we now know what he was planning on using that glove for, trying to change perceived flaws in hero society. 𝐀𝐦 Woods quietly muttered. Admirable, but the way he does it is likely to get negative attention on himself. Yeah, but he's not really hurting anyone, is he? 𝐷𝐿ady asked. I guess not. 𝐷𝐻𝐼𝐸 mused, still in bad taste. Even if the people Beck hurt are dead, it'd be like if he dressed up as Hitler. Just because it's been a long time doesn't mean it didn't happen. Except Hitler was the leader of a massive political organization dedicated to Aryan supremacy and the extermination of lesser peoples. Beck just stole stuff from people in New York, very rarely killing, so it's more like he's dressing up as Nakamura Jirakichi or Blackbeard, 𝐀𝐦 Woods pointed out. But yeah, dressing as a villain is in poor taste. I did not come here expecting a political debate, 𝐷𝐿ady moaned, rubbing her temples. The kid's trying to make a statement, but we don't know if what he's doing is really a good way to do it. Can we just leave it at that? Fine. 𝐷𝐻𝐼𝐸 conceded, taking a bite out of some ice cream. Think there's anyone who we should intern with? 𝐀𝐦 Woods asked, mainly to think of a new topic to discuss. I like the Kirishima kid, 𝐷𝐻𝐼𝐸 said casually. Real hands-on type. I think I could help him out. That mass-altering girl, Kodai-san, I think she'd be a good pick for an intern, since she can reduce rubble to a manageable size and my quirk is similar to hers, just internal instead of external, 𝐷𝐿ady said thoughtfully. The two of them stared at the fellow pro hero, not believing her for a second. You just want her to make giant shoes for you? Huh, I do not. And besides, running around barefoot isn't always easy. This new Mysterio could be a problem. Is he? He's just a child. A child who's making people question the status quo we've sacrificed much for to maintain. If people start questioning villains and their motives, they are likely to become sympathetic. Sympathy leads to people questioning if there's a way to prevent villains from appearing in the first place. This means they'll try to make things better, driving less people to villainy. The less villains there are, the less heroes are needed, and the less power we have to maintain the peace. I think you're overthinking this. I'm looking for possible threats that need to be removed before they become a problem. and my instinct tells me this child will be a problem if nothing is done about him soon enough. We could send our taskmaster after him. No, not yet. It's too soon. She only recently got back from her last mission. If we send her out again, people may realize who she is. Besides, the boy has yet to gain any traction in the hero community. Killing him early could create a martyr. Also, he's a child. So is Franklin Richards. Touche. I know it's hard to accept, but to keep the peace, one must sacrifice things for the greater good. Would probably help if All Might didn't seem so invested in the kid. True, but then, he's always been a force we couldn't control. Even if he's doing exactly what we want without us saying so. Just because he's doing things that benefit us now doesn't mean that it'll stay that way. Still, 𝐀𝐦 publishing and stylo discussion is helping our agenda immensely. But why are they so obsessed with the child? Doesn't matter. For now, we maintain our distance and observe the child. If he's a threat to the peace, we'll remove him for the greater good. Hail Hydra! Hail Hydra! Hail Hydra! Hail Hydra! Everyone ready? Relieve themselves. Got refills. Excellent. Let's get back to the games. The crowd cheered as the 40 or so hero students who passed the first round gathered before midnight. Now that everyone has been re-energized, let's see what fun awaits us in the next round. The woman accented her statement with a lick of her lips. Seriously, how has she not gotten a reprimand? Jirio questioned, earjacks flailing in disbelief as the virtual wheel popped up, spinning rapidly. Tell me about it, Midoriya thought, blushing as he looked away. And the next game is. The wheel stopped on a trio of symbols, a crown, a shield, and a dagger. Kings, knights, and thieves. The crowd murmured. It seemed that none of them had heard of this game before. Midoriya certainly hadn't. Here's how it works. Midnight began, and the screen behind her activated. This is the battleground. Within this battleground, the top 40 students will create teams of 4 members and receive one of the following towers, based upon the placement of the team's highest scoring member in the obstacle course race. Image by me at DeviantArt. Each tower has a territory marked out, where you can set up traps and obstacles for your rival teams. Teams are made up of 3 types of people: the king, the group's leader who stays within the tower base, the knight, who can either help defend the tower or patrol their territory from the last group, the thieves, who can intrude upon other territories. Why would they do this? For treasure, of course. Image by me at DeviantArt. Each base protects a chest full of gold coins. These coins are each worth 1 point. And each base's chest starts with 500 gold coins. The thieves have to go in and take the treasure, avoiding the knights. Thieves are free to take either the entire chest or a handful of coins at a time, but the stolen gold has to be brought within your team's tower before it's added to your score. But beware, other thieves and knights are free to steal your stolen loot. So there's 3 character types, but 4 people to each team. So it's about deciding on whether you go for offense or defense. In addition, some people are more mobile than others, and parallel to this, some people are better suited for defense over mobility, while some are a perfect mix, so a leader needs to be able to decide what person would be best at. Tsuburaya noted, unaware that Midoriya was thinking the same thing. There is, however, another way to get points besides the gold coins. Each king is assigned a silver crown, worth 100 points. Image by me at DeviantArt. The acting king must wear the crown on their person in an easy-to-steal position. On your head, hanging from a belt, carried in your hand, taped to your back. All of that's good as long as the thieves can easily take it. Once a crown is stolen, the former king is free to leave the tower to re-obtain the crown or help their knights defend the rest of the gold. Looks like the crowns could be representing the top 10 pro heroes in the country. Tsuburaya mused. A pro hero could either attempt to regain their lost position or ignore it. This should give some insight onto the fellow students. Now for the most important part. The first place team. Everyone visibly looked up, eager to see what Midoriya would have to go through. Unlike the last game, there aren't any special objectives to fulfill, but the consequences for failure will be most dire for his team. For you see, if Midoriya fails to get into the top 3 winners, not only will he be immediately disqualified from the rest of the game, but so will his teammates. Midoriya went very still. He could hear several students backing away from him, acting as if he was a leper of some sort. Oh, and just to sweeten things up, Team 1 will be receiving the gold crown, worth 1 million points. Midnight practically squealed in excitement at the statement. Image by me at DeviantArt. That's right. Anyone who obtains the gold crown is immediately qualified for the next game. Midnight cackled in glee. Fuck, was all Midoriya could mutter out as several stares, hungry for points and angry from the obstacle course, turned onto him. I'm so dead. So what's the plan, bossman? Midoriya turned to Mei, surprised that, while everyone else broke off into their own groups, the support student immediately came over. Mei, no, if you're with me, you could get disqualified, don't care. You're my friend, Izuku. I'm not leaving you high and dry, Mei said, her tone clear that she wasn't going to change her mind. Besides, you're gonna need my babies to help out with whatever crazy illusion you've cooked up. You're right, but that's still only 2 people on our try 3. 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭 ran over, clipping her flight pack back on. Friends should stick together, no matter what. 𝐻𝐡𝐭, Midoriya's eyes began watering. Please don't cry, boss. It's been ages since 𝐀𝐦's plea was cut off by a stream of tears soaking the ground around them. Well, we're gonna need one more person, and I don't think there's any more volunteers. Rubbing his eyes, Midoriya nodded. Yeah, I have the beginnings of a plan, but we need someone else to help us finish it off. Who? Ada. He's the fastest, 𝐻𝐡𝐭 suggested. No, and besides, he's already been claimed by Todoroki. And same with Momo. Darn. Midoriya looked around. Already several teams had begun to form while 𝐶𝐚𝐭 created the battleground. 9 plain-looking towers around a tent. Those who had teams already moved to Midnight, who gave their leader a silver crown and a megaphone, while each person received a numbered badge depicting their role and team, then directing them to their designated tower. Not many people are left, 𝐻𝐡𝐭 muttered, but Deku put a hand on her shoulder, eliciting a small blush from the gravity girl. Don't worry, we have our final member in sight. I just hope she's willing to help us make some magic happen. So what's the plan? Go after Mido, bro? Kirishima asked as they looked around their base, Tower 3. Like the other towers, it was a 3-story building, with each room only a bit smaller than their homeroom. The bottom floor was the only one with a cement floor, which transitioned into stairs that went up to the next floor. The chest, full of plastic coins with embedded circuitry, rested in the middle of the 2nd floor, the lid open with a digital counter inside the lid itself. Just past that was a wooden ladder that went up to a trapdoor that led to the top of the tower from the 2nd floor. There are no electrical lights, only narrow windows that let in daylight, which Zero had sealed up with his tape. Bakugo rolled his eyes. Of course it is. It'll take more than a few shitty drones just to stop us. Plus, we know his drones are there, and they're pretty similar to one another. Just avoid their attacks, get close, and smash them to bits, Zero commented, shooting out more strands of tape to surround the chest and seal up the trapdoor. I don't get why I'm the king. Don't you want to be king, Bakugo? Kaminari asked. Indeed, Kaminari was the one who wore the silver crown upon his head, secured to its spot with a bit of tape. No, 'cause then I'd have to stay here. I'm better suited as a thief. Bakugo snapped. Your quirk works better at close range, and only an idiot would try to grab a lightning rod like you. Hell yeah, Kirishima smirked. And don't worry, Kaminari, you can count on me to act as your knight. I won't let anyone through. Then it's up to me and Bakugo to claim the crown. Zero, finishing his task, approached. The interior resembled a spider's den more than a tower, strands of tape crisscrossing all over. Just don't slow me down, Bakugo growled as he left the tower. Once he and Kirishima were outside, Zero crossed several strands of tape across the doorway, sealing it off and hopefully slowing down anyone who tried to get inside. Kaminari sighed, sitting on a chair someone had provided for the king, when a thought occurred to him. Wait, doesn't this mean I'm the one in charge? So we're not going after the gold crown? Shoji looked at their diminutive leader, who was spreading several of his balls all over the territory of Tower 10. No, and trust me, while it's tempting, it's not worth it, since everyone else is going after Midoriya. Mido explained. We'd be better off hunkering down, while Tokoyami and Dark Shadow steal the gold. You'll be the knight, since your massive arms can protect not only me, but the treasure chest as well. You're only going to have one knight, Shoji asked. Actually, Koda's going to be our other knight, Mido corrected. Midoriya already proved that outside help is allowed, so we just need some friends to keep the place safe. Koda, unsure of why he was there, stood up and started signing rapidly. Our friend asks if you have any preferences for whichever beastly ally he summons. Tokoyami helpfully translated. Just anything fast. We'll need numbers more than strength. Go for pigeons most of all. Maybe they can steal the gold from the other thieves, Mido said thoughtfully. Okay, that's the plan. Everyone cool with it? Koji nodded, while Shoji gave a thumbs up. A clever machination for success, but one that relies upon luck. Will fate blow an ill wind upon us, or will our efforts bear fruit? Was Tokoyami's response. I'm going to assume that means you're cool with the plan. This is perfect. Monoma cackled as Ibara covered Tower Number 4 tower with thorny vines. While everyone else focuses on the upstart villain student, we'll be going around, stealing coins from the other teams. Hell yeah, I hope I encounter that red-headed faker in 1A. Tetsu banged his metal fists together, eager for the upcoming battle. I'd rather face that explosive prick, Kamakiri growled, scraping his blades against each other. Knock that loudmouth down a peg or 3. Be careful not to let your passions blind you, my friends. Ibara spoke up, growing a thick wall of her vines around the various possible entrances. What's more, you have a lot of faith that I'll be able to protect our treasure on my own. Would it not be prudent to leave one of you behind in case I get besieged? No, we need to make up for our late start and that villain student's machinations. We cannot allow him to keep us lost in the crowd. and I have faith you can protect our treasure. After all, our class is inherently superior to those spotlight hoggers, Monoma insisted. The only ones we need to truly worry about are Endeavor's child, the Ieyasu heiress, and Mysterio. Yeah, about that. Are you sure that Midoriya-kun's a villain? Tetsu asked Monoma. I mean, he looks like he's just trying to prove everyone's worth as heroes. The games already handle that. Asking the principal to be the villain of the games, the center of attention, just screams a sense of inadequacy that he's trying to overcome by putting everyone else down while disguising it as lifting them up. Monoma dismissed, having evidently never learned the definition of projection. Midoriya stood atop the 5-story tower number 1, directing his drones in silence. Hanging from his belt, golden color, was a crown with 1 million painted on the front. He was nervous about the task ahead of his team. Any sane person would have been, seeing as everyone was more than likely to go after his team. He had a plan to outlast them, of course, but he needed to move quickly so he could set up his next illusion. His plan would require everyone to keep their focus on him and little else. Midoriya looked over to the final member of their team, skating over on a weak trail of acid, her speed aided by small rocket thrusters on her ankles. They finished up the traps you requested, and she made these awesome gauntlet leg armor things for me. Mina gestured to her arms, which had bladed bracers made of dark purple ceramic and plastic attached over her acid-directing gloves. Upon her shins were similar-looking greaves, the blades passing to just above her knees. But they might limit my acid ability. Don't worry, May's PMP made sure to include ports for your acid to pass through safely, Midoriya assured her. May blinked in surprise and promptly tested it out, acid spraying through her left greave without damage to the armor. Wow, and she used that thing to build it on the spot, too. I might ask for something like this in the future, if all her inventions are this brilliant. May's an amazing friend. She's actually memorized all the blueprints for our company's support gear and can make whatever we need on the spot. Midoriya nodded with agreement, but then turned serious. You remember the plan, right? Chaco and I hang around, defending the tower from the sky and ground. You and May stay in the tower. Mina listed off. You're sure you won't need me to be a thief? My acid would be amazing to eat through just about any defense. No, I can handle that if we really need to. Right now, just focus on keeping everyone else out, Midoriya assured her. I still think your Pafu is gonna be overkill in that regard, but okay. Alright, people, time for the next epic battle. Will Team Midoriya remain the king, or will he be dethroned? That's my cue. Mina skated off, an eager smile on her face, while outside, Ochako took to the air with her jetpack and some extra gadgets crafted by May. Midoriya smirked, then sent out the final command. Todoroki narrowed his eyes as the clouds above them darkened. I did not think there was going to be a forecast of rain today. Ada spoke up, doing stretches. It wasn't, Momo said, wearing the crown upon her head and manning a turret loaded with Midoriya's web formula shots. So either someone has a weather-altering power, or it's Midoriya. Penny, once again piloting the S.P.I.D.E.R.W.O.M.N, approached Todoroki, prepping an arm-mounted web cannon. The son of Endeavor grimaced. Midoriya had not used his quirk in any way, angering the heterochromatic hero in training. His superpower quirk, clearly inherited from his father All Might, would have been perfect for Todoroki's desire to prove how he only needed his eyes. But instead, his classmate stuck with his toys and illusions. While it was, admittedly, amusing to see Midoriya run circles around everyone else, it could not distract from Todoroki's goals. And, begin. Present Mike bellowed out. Several students ran out of the towers. Some students, the knights, stopped at the border of their territories. But the thieves ran straight for Midoriya's tower. This continued even as the clouds above the arena descended. Though several students did stop, including Ada, Todoroki continued moving forward, ignoring the hidden drones blasting music from another video game. At least, until something bashed him in the face, sending him back. As the clouds vanished, the battleground had changed. Instead of a plain field with simple cement towers, now the students stood within a battlefield straight out of Lord of the Rings, complete with a helmeted orc army approaching from Midoriya's territory, armed with weapons and shields, bearing Mysterio's eye as a coat of arms upon the latter. Upon the tower in the center of the field were identical banners, Midoriya watching from the top of the tower. Die, you shitty drone. Bakugo blasted forward, firing at the torso of the warrior, who dodged and swung his weapon, a massive club. The weapon missed, but Zero wrapped the monster in his tape, and, with a mighty heave, flung it against another warrior, where it exploded into a shower of parts, its face torn open to reveal a robotic skull covered in realistic latex. Robots. Midoriya has robots. Sato yelped from his spot, narrowly dodging a battle axe wielded by another orc. Oh yes, Midoriya called out from the tower. A holographic version of his Mysterio outfit over his body, the pink-haired support student by his side, aiming a rifle at anyone who tried to approach from the air. I felt like changing things up from drones. And who doesn't love robots? You fucker. I'm gonna kill ya. Bakugo flew towards Midoriya, his hands thrown behind himself. He barely made it to the second floor when a blur knocked him out of the air. Sorry, but the skies belong to me. Decloaking, Ochako hovered above him, several small devices clipped to her uniform. Ah yes, Castle Illusion's wondrous harpy shall protect her lord and master from these invaders. Midoriya cried out triumphantly. A swarm of body parts flew towards him, but Midoriya pointed to them and shouted aloud. FULMINAVENIT. From above Midoriya, a green cloud appeared, shooting lightning bolts at each part as they approached. And who says Mysterio cannot get his hands dirty? Youch. Dang, this is tougher than I thought, Setsuna muttered, her disembodied mouth startling Midoriya for a moment. Gotta say, you've impressed me, fellow greenie, but I'm not gonna let a cutie like you win. Well, what? Midoriya was caught off guard and nearly missed the strand of tape that wrapped around the battlement behind him, though a blast from May's rifle destroyed the strand. Oh, thanks, May. The support student nodded, taking aim at an approaching Tsuyu while the speakers crackled to life. What you just saw was the Rat UIID railgun, developed by wondrous might and heroism, capable of turning anything that fits in its barrel into a powerful projectile. Also among their catalog of support items is Starling Model Flight Pack, excellent for aerial maneuverability and capable of carrying up to 453 kilograms without issue. Perfectly timed, Ochako appeared, kicking away and approaching Bakugo into a horde of skeletal warriors. Todoroki-kun. The fire ice user looked over where Ida was pointing, mismatched eyes widening when he saw several of Midoriya's warriors attacking several towers, including their own. Shifting his right foot, Todoroki launched a wave of ice spikes, impaling several of the robots. Satisfied, Todoroki turned back to the central tower. Nothing was going to stop him from winning. No matter how many robots or drones Midoriya summoned as backup. First drones, now robots. Dang, what has her boy been cooking up? 𝐀𝐦 looked over at Mitsuki, who was grinning widely. I don't know. Whenever he tries to explain his gadgets, most of it goes over my head. These are the actor robots. The three parents looked over at Tsuburaya, who was calmly watching the games. Mysterio was well known for his robots, but most were rooted to one spot, or incapable of moving into position quickly enough, so Izuku's been developing a way to create an army that is fast and mobile, and these are the prototypes. Why aren't those drones of his enough? Bakugo's father asked. In most scenarios, they would be. However, Midoriya's drones are only capable of a certain set of tasks, have only a rudimentary program that needs to be uploaded prior, and are incapable of making adjustments to their flight plan should something go wrong. They're set on the path set forward, not to mention they're easy to disable once they've been discovered. Actors, however, have more advanced programming, and their humanoid forms are more adaptable, capable of actual combat, though only for a short period of time. With adjustment, I believe he'll even be able to build robots that can think more independently than the drones. That's kind of terrifying, Mitsuki admitted. Wait, what's to keep them from going Ultron? Masaru asked, which got him a glare from Tsuburaya. You mean aside from the fact that they have no more intelligence than an internet chatbot? Izuku programmed them with a set of override codes that he can use to disable them, and these codes can't be erased since they're tied to the primary programming, meaning that if, by some ridiculous chance, one of them gained sentience and tried to attack people, Izuku could disable it. What's more, they're designed to be scouting, stealth units, not prolonged fighters like the drones, so if someone hacked into one to attack people, they'd be easy to break apart, even without using a quirk. Wait, if that's the case, why's Midoriya using them at all? Mitsuki asked. They'd be a terrible army to fight with. He's not using them to fight. The three glanced at 𝐀𝐦, who was watching a group of robotic skeletons break into a tower, fend off the night, and carry out sacks filled with treasure before moving on to the next tower. They were stopped by a girl shooting horns from her head whilst riding two others. Once she took them down, she gathered their dropped treasure, bringing it back to a tower run by a Gen Ed student with purple hair, guarded by a girl with massive hands and a boy with a tail. He's sending them out to gather treasure, and letting other groups have a chance to earn points even if they aren't going to get his crown. Even when he's a faux villain, your kid's looking out for everyone else. Mitsuki laughed, but in the back of their minds, a question lingered, unspoken. But will this act of compassion cost him? And Team Monoma has gained 20 points, bringing them to 6th place. Midoriya was pleased with how the plan was progressing. May was keeping the students at bay from a distance. Ochako was stopping anyone that tried to approach from the tower from above, and Mina was moving quickly along the ground, utilizing her dance moves with her armor and quirk to chase away anyone attempting to breach their tower. The actors were pouring in without issue, even when some were being smashed. Cloaked drones carried in new units. At the rate things were going, Midoriya might not even need Pafu. But right as he thought that, a massive blast of webs knocked Midoriya down, wrapped around his form. Hey, where did I've got him. Get the crown, Momo shouted from atop her tower, carrying a bazooka and megaphone. With renewed eagerness, several thieves ran for the tower, among them being Bakugo and Todoroki. They opened fire with the rifle. Orbs of restraint slime hitting Ada and Monoma, but there were too many. Even when Mina and Ochako tried to keep people away, their acid and jetpack could only do so much. Boss man, they, extending out her robotic arms, tore and cut at the webs covering her friend, eventually freeing Midoriya. They were enacting phase 2. Midoriya hurriedly explained. The girl nodded and climbed down from the tower, carried by her arms as she kept blasting people with rubber balls launched by the railgun. This is the halfway point, people. Is Midoriya finally going to be taken down from his throne of power? You hear that? We're about to win and take your crown. Dark Shadow taunted as they approached, Tokoyami on the ground with arms full of gold coins. But Midoriya only chuckled. Oh, is that what you think, Shadow Beast? Midoriya chuckled, regaining some of his persona. Very well then, time for the climax of this epic battle. 𝐸 𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷𝗀𝐷 purple cape twisted around him, enshrouding all but his dome. He twisted, enlarging until he was the same size as the tower itself. Then his purple cape morphed, bones forming within the folds. Scales appeared upon the cloth, while shoulders expanded out and the bottom of the cape grew out, coiling around the tower like a massive purple serpent. The glass helmet bubbled like wax and distorted, becoming longer, narrower, morphing into a reptilian head, colored gold with a dark green, fluffy-looking mane. Finally, the purple wings were thrown open with a mighty gust of wind. Midoriya no longer looked human. Instead, he was a massive, green and gold reptilian beast of legend, the crown now hanging from his neck on a string like a pendant while the massive creature curled around the tower protectively. Accompanying the change, the drones switched from one game soundtrack to another. The monster leered down at Dark Shadow, who suddenly felt very small. Nice dragon. 𝐓𝐡𝐢𝐬. In lieu of a verbal response, the robotic drake simply blasted flames at the living quirk, sending it fleeing in fear from the bright flames, Takoyami behind it. Most of the other students followed shortly thereafter. The flock of pigeons that had been quietly stealing gold coins dropped their loot, instinctively fleeing from the flames. A dragon. Midoriya turned into a dragon? Was all present Mike could stutter out, his sunglasses falling off from shock, whereas Aizawa just groaned aloud. Absolutely done. Sure, why not? Just be careful here you point those flames, problem child. Consider this the boss fight, people. Midoriya cackled, his voice electronically altered to be deeper and more dragon-like. So who wants to be the hero and slay Pafu the mighty dragon? What is that thing, a hologram? Tetsu yelped, barely dodging a stream of flames that got close to him, the scent of chemicals lingering in the air after the trail of flames. I dunno, those flames feel pretty real for a hologram, Kiro. See, you hopped away. Her tongue covered in gold coins, possibly looted from the other students. Tetsu was stopped from responding due to running into Ajiro, who blinked and looked around in confusion, before freezing up in shock at the sight of the mechanical monster atop Midoriya's tower. Bakugo screamed in rage. This is bullshit, Deku. The student rocketed forward, trying to pass through the hologram, but found himself knocked away with a smack of the beast's wings. As he fell, Bakugo's eyes widened. Unlike the last time he'd been under one of Midoriya's illusions, he could tell that the attack wasn't real because of the lack of texture. The pulse cannons Midoriya used for his attacks couldn't imitate something like rock or skin. But when the beast's wing impacted him, Bakugo could feel the scales, the rubbery, latex material, the bone-like structure underneath. It's real. It's a robot. Zero, panicking from all the flames, corrected. Keep your distance. Screw that. We're taking that shitty thing down and snatching Deku's crown. How though? We can't get close to it with those flames. Bakugo bit his lip. They were running out of time, and the roaring dragon was not wait. Inside the dragon's mouth, Bakugo could see its robotic innards, including a tank of chemicals hooked up to the flamethrower. Quickly formulating a plan, Bakugo went behind his tower and pulled out his megaphone elbows. I need you. Despite grumbling about the lack of his name, Zero ran over. What is it? Your tape's flammable, right? Bakugo removed his PE uniform jacket and the shirt underneath. Yeah, and that thing's claws can just remove the tape, so it's useless against the dragon? Why? Zero asked, confused about his team leader's stripping. But it doesn't burn up immediately, does it? Bakugo asked, balling up the shed garments. Well, no, then I need you to wrap this up in at least 3 layers of tape. Bakugo thrusted the garments into Zero's hands, ignoring the Spider-Man fan's disgust. But, won't it burn up? Zero questioned, holding out the sweat-soaked bundle with his fingertips and wrinkling his nose at the rank smell. Not immediately. The tape will act like a fuse. Bakugo snapped. Now do it. Midoriya, is this not somewhat extreme? Iida shouted, fleeing from a trail of flames the dragon robot sent after him. How so? The danger room of Xavier's School for the Gifted has much more intense stuff than a mere Drake. The dragon chuckled deeply, using its tail to lazily knock away an approaching 𝐀𝐦. Besides, I thought heroes were all about overcoming unfair odds. That's what Aizawa-sensei says. Anyways, leave me out of this mayhem, problem child, came Aizawa's tired voice. Todoroki glared at the battlefield around him. Penny was still dealing with the robot soldiers, and Todoroki was skating away from Mina, whose acid was dissolving his ice at an intense rate, though she stopped once she reached the edge of their territory. Mei, meanwhile, had left the tower, swapping out the sniper rifle with a pair of gauntlets that she used to knock away anyone else that tried to approach from the ground. Ochako, lastly, was watching the dragon's blind spot, preventing sneak attacks from being effective and keeping people away with some kind of slime grenade. Anyone else had abandoned the dragon, and instead chose to attack the other towers. Only a few minutes left, people. Present Mike shouted, the dragon roaring in triumph. Todoroki seethed in silent fury. His ice platforms weren't enough to get close. The robot's flames were strong enough to weaken it enough that a mere swipe of the tail shattered his strongest pillar, and thanks to frostbite, he couldn't risk creating too many at once. What's more, if he tried just overwhelming the machine with a glacier, he'd risk launching the crown out of the game. He was out of options. His anger at the situation, at how Midoriya wasn't taking his challenge seriously, made him angry. He could feel his left side ignite, flames covering his arm. Die, you shitty fake lizard. Todoroki glanced up, seeing Bakugo, without the top of his uniform, carrying a small bundle of Ceros tape that he threw like a softball into the burning maw of the dragon, blocking the flamethrower for a moment upon impact with the faux creature's throat. The massive beast turned to Bakugo, glaring, when Cero appeared, thrown by Kirishima, shooting tape around the robot's mouth and wrapping it shut. The strangeness of the scene made Todoroki go still, the flames upon his arm vanishing as quickly as they had come. Everyone get clear, Cero shouted. It's gonna blow. Quickly realizing what the tape user meant. Everyone, including Ochako, Mina, Ida, Mei, Penny, and Midoriya, appearing from nowhere, fled from the tower. The dragon, hearing this, began to struggle, reaching up and clawing at its mouth. But it was too late. Boom. 𝐹WOOSH. The flames ignited Bakugo's shirt, soaked in nitroglycerin-esque sweat, which detonated, in turn igniting the chemicals in the robot's throat. And in only a few seconds flat, the dragon's head, neck, and claws were blown off, landing in pieces all over the stadium. The audience was protected, thanks to an energy barrier that kept stray attacks from hurting anyone. The students were not as lucky, many narrowly avoiding the pieces as they fell, others using the robotic soldiers as shields. Some weren't lucky, getting hot bits of metal and latex upon them. And the dragon itself, the lifeless torso, bits of its skin burning away to reveal hollow robotic innards and drones controlling parts of it with wires, fell from the tower, burning as it fell, crashing down. Following this, the music Midoriya had been playing cut out, the boy himself panting in shock. Holy! In a stunning twist, Team Bakugo just slayed the Midoriya dragon, and endangered a lot of people in the process. Aizawa pointed out, calmly checking his tablet while the crowd began to panic. Everyone calm down. 𝐀𝐦 and Recovery Girl are on their way to help anyone who needs medical attention. If anyone needs serious help, please alert our medical staff. Midnight called out. The robots in question, led by 𝐀𝐦 and Recovery Girl, running onto the field with first aid kits and stretchers. Thankfully, most of the students only needed to be treated for second-degree burns, at the worst, which was quickly taken care of by Recovery Girl, while 𝐀𝐦 used her microbots to remove any shrapnel that was in the students. A surprised shout drew everyone's attention. Midoriya, now covered in ice, was pinned to his towers outside, while Todoroki, ignoring everyone else, ran to the fallen crown, snatching it, then ice skating to his team's tower, making it inside just before the clock ran down. I win, he stated flatly, placing the crown on his head, feeling triumphant even as people looked at him in shock and a bit of outrage. Checking her tablet, Midnight sighed and raised her whip. Team Midoriya wins, with 1,363 points. Everyone turned to her, screaming in anger and confusion. What? Bakugo stormed over to the referee, his hands popping with sparks. But Icy Hot has the gold crown. Does he? Midoriya asked from his position, his Mysterio suit vanishing, and revealing a Knight Shield badge upon his uniform. The crown upon Todoroki's head flickered, and suddenly it too vanished, replaced with a circle of dark purple metal holding 4 holocubes, much to everyone's shock and confusion. The rules only said the king had to keep the crown in an easy-to-take spot on their person, but they never said the team couldn't hide who had the crown. But wait, if you're not the king, then your team broke the rules, because everyone else left the tower when the dragon appeared. Momo shouted, emerging from Todoroki's own tower. Actually, I didn't. Everyone turned towards Mei, calmly walking over on the PMP, despite being on fire and sparking from the bits of metal sticking out of her. She continued as she used a laser from her gauntlet to melt away the ice covering her friend. I've been inside the tower this whole time, remotely controlling this actor. Everyone turned to the tower itself, where, emerging from a hidden trapdoor in the floor, May exited, wearing a haptic suit, the real gold crown upon her head, matching the badge upon her lapel. The false May, an actor robot, fell limp as May retrieved the PMP from it. Our plan used misdirection, the most basic technique of any illusionist. 𝐻𝐡𝐤 landed on the ground, disabling her pack, with Midoriya and everyone else seemingly outside. No one would really try getting inside the tower, but to make absolutely sure, Midoriya had 𝗵𝗄 set up to keep everyone's attention. I helped make the hidden trapdoor, Mina said proudly, skating over. It took a lot out of me, but May helped with her amazing pack's arms. Ugh, you fucking cheater. 𝗏𝑘𝐻𝐽 threw up his arms, storming off in anger. Several other students looked ready to join him. In any case, right behind the first place winners is Team Todoroki, with 792 points, President Mike announced, silencing the students and crowd. In third place is Team 𝗏𝑘𝐻𝐽, with 743 total points. 𝗏𝑘𝐻𝐽 gnashed his teeth in anger at the idea that he got third place. We still have a chance to win, Zero tried to assure him. Shut up, 𝗏𝑘𝐻𝐽 quietly snapped. In fourth place, we have Team ☆ with 521 points, making them the final team to enter. Actually, Anjiro and I choose to bow out of the third round, Itsuka Kendo announced, using a megaphone to ensure she was heard. Everyone stared at her, save for ☆, who didn't seem to care for some reason. What? Why? President Mike asked, genuinely confused. Neither of us remember what we did to earn our position, so it doesn't sit right with us, Anjiro explained, though Midoriya noticed that he was giving ☆ a look as he spoke, while the Gen Ed student looked unbothered. All right, then. In that case, we'll have to get 2 students from the team in 5th place. The boy walked forward, grabbing Midoriya's arm, and spoke before the green-haired teen could speak up. We need to talk. Alone. Congratulations to everyone who made it to the third round. We're going to take a quick break for lunch, but when we get back, we'll have something special for those who didn't make it into the final round, the recreational side games. 𝐻𝐡𝐤 smiled. She had been worried about making it this far, but she had been doing amazingly. Sure, most of it was due to her wing pack, and she still needed a lot of training to get good at it, but she was getting a lot of attention, and she didn't feel like she was riding on anyone else's coattails with it, since it was her own skill in piloting the device. Though she didn't create the device herself, so in a way, she did owe it largely to Midoriya's company. Maybe, after the game, he could join her for some celebratory matcha. The idea made her blush, but she remembered May's words. This wasn't the time to be doubtful, but instead to seize her chance. Before she could speak with her crush, though, she saw Todoroki pull him away, and she was tempted to follow, make sure he would be all right, but decided instead to stay where she was. Midoriya was a capable guy, and could handle himself. For now, maybe she'll just talk with her classmates and meet up with him after the third event. After all, it's not like Midoriya had anything important to do after the sports festival, right? Midoriya had no idea what was going on. One moment he was commanding his drones to clean up the remains of his dragon. The next Todoroki was dragging him to a private side entrance. Is this going to take long? Because I need to prepare for the next. You're not taking my challenge seriously. Todoroki interrupted. Seeing Midoriya just staring at him blankly, Todoroki continued. I told you to give it your all, but all you've done is use support items and rule bending. You're not showing off your quirk, your true strength. Well, that's hypocritical of you. Midoriya spat out. Excuse me. Todoroki suspected he knew what Midoriya was referring to. You're talking about not taking this seriously, when you're just using only your ice instead of your fire. Midoriya snapped, glaring at the heterochromatic boy who was returning his gaze with equal intensity. I have personal reasons for that. And unlike your father's quirk, I only need my ice. Wait, what? Midoriya blinked, staring at him, anger forgotten in place of confusion. Yes, I figured out All Might is your father, Todoroki explained, frustrated. You're trying to hide it with the Mysterio aesthetic, but your use of smashes, super strength, and the smiles adorning your costume are indication enough of his influence. All Might's not my dad, Midoriya flatly said. My dad, Hisashi Midoriya ni Akatani, works abroad in America as a financial investigator for the Future Foundation. Todoroki blinked. Wait, how do you know he's not divorced from your mom and they're just hiding it? Because he Zooms us every month. Again on my birthday and Christmas, still sends me gifts that he knows I like, and he's happy to see me every time he contacts us. Midoriya responded, offended at the idea of his father being a liar. Todoroki blinked. The idea of such a long-distance family having never occurred to him as possible. Well, regardless of your parentage, you aren't using your power, because I just figured out how to use it safely. I don't have any practice with it and I don't want to hurt myself, Midoriya pointed out. But your father is 𝗫𝗏, so you should be more than capable of that. Bastard is not my father. Todoroki's voice came out as a growl, his stoic demeanor fracturing for the first time Midoriya had ever known him. What? Was all Midoriya could ask. That man is nothing more than my sperm donor, who bought my mother like cattle to fulfill his own purposes. Todoroki spat out. What are you talking about? Midoriya asked, horror creeping into his voice, and Todoroki answered. For several minutes, Todoroki told of 𝗫𝗏's ambitions to be the strongest hero, but that he always fell short of All Might. The man seemed to have no limit. And 𝗫𝗏, for all his efforts, found there was a threshold of heat that he just couldn't surpass without endangering himself. No matter what the man did, he just could not grow stronger than the god in human skin. So he decided to make someone who could. Quirk marriages, or marrying a partner for the express purpose of producing a child with a powerful quirk, was heavily frowned upon. But that did not stop 𝗫𝗏 from finding a woman, Himura, whose quirk was generating ice with a weakness to heat. For 23 years, the man attempted to birth the perfect heir. The first child, 𝐀𝐦, seemed to be a good candidate, for his flames burned much hotter than even his father. But it was found that he had a weakness to his own heat, and was forced to stop, much to the boy's anger. The next two siblings, Fayumi and Natsuo, weren't as strong as 𝗫𝗏 hoped for, so he cast them aside. But then, �Shoto was born. As indicated by his hair and heterochromia, he had power over both fire and ice, and could use them to compensate for any weaknesses the other produced. So 𝗫𝗏 focused all his efforts on strengthening �Shoto, and �Shoto alone. He was seen as the favorite, the child that would surpass even the #1 hero. But 𝗀𝐻𝐦 became envious, and even tried to attack �Shoto as a baby. He wasn't successful, but he was later found to have been continuing his practices in the woods, even as his quirk damaged his body, leaving awful burns across himself. Eventually, his flames grew so hot that the surrounding woods burned down, and the boy was presumed dead, with only a burnt white piece of his jawbone left behind. Fearing for the safety of her son, Rei's mental health declined, and she grew to despise the man she had married, fearing that 𝗫𝗏 would drive her youngest to hurt himself worse than 𝗀𝐻𝐦. Desperate and undergoing a mental breakdown, she came up with a horrible plan to try and spare her child from such a fate. She boiled a pot of water, and when �Ｓhoto approached, she poured it over his left side, the side that had the face of his father. Rei was committed to a mental institute not long after, and 𝗫𝗏 doubled down on the training he forced his boy through. No more games, no more family time, no love, only training. And �Ｓhoto grew bitter. He did not hate his mother for what she did to him, but he hated his father for driving her to such depths. So he decided to get revenge on the man who created him by becoming the strongest hero alive, but by using only his mother's power. By the end of the story, Todoroki's sole audience member was silent. Do you understand now, Midoriya? Todoroki asked. I cannot use my fire again, because that would just give that monster satisfaction. I must use my ice, and only my ice. And you need to use only your quirk to fight me. There is nothing my ice cannot do. But you need to use your quirk so I can prove it to the bastard who made me. Silently, Todoroki turned away, leaving his silent classmate behind. After a few minutes of silence, Midoriya pulled out his phone and started texting. Green Fish B0WL, Subaraya, begin an investigation into 𝗫𝗏's personal life. I have good reason to believe that emotional, and possibly physical abuse is occurring at Todoroki-kun's house. Lord Zero F illusions. Wouldn't that be better handled by the authorities? I'm not a detective, and if it gets out that you conducted an investigation that led to an unauthorized breach of privacy, that could further taint your already shaky reputation. Green Fish B0WL. I cannot risk 𝗫𝗏 himself finding out about this. What's more, he's likely to use his influence to drive any official investigation away. Lord Zero F illusions. Fair enough. I'll see what I can do. But what about when it's time to actually use the evidence? 𝐸𝐻𝐵0WL. Once you've compiled enough evidence, I'll deliver it to Detective 𝐬𝐻𝐸 personally. Lord Zero F Illusions, I think you're kicking a hornet's nest when you don't have to. But fine. 𝐸𝐻𝐵0WL. I probably am. But like All Might said, a hero is someone who interferes even when they don't need to. But in this case, I need to. For the sake of a classmate. Midoriya pocketed his phone. A dozen thoughts going through his head as he walked. A cyclone of differing emotions focused on what Todoroki spilled out to him in their discussion. As a boy, Midoriya had always respected 𝗫𝗏, largely because the man was the number 2 pro hero and his Hellfire quirk was similar to his father's Fire Breath quirk. Over time, though, as Tsuburaya taught him to better read people, Midoriya's opinion changed. It was clear that 𝗫𝗏 cared only about his position in the hero polls. He was gruff and unapproachable, but solved more cases personally than the rest of his agency combined. It was likely because he wanted people to be certain that his position was due to his own strength instead of charm. But the man was notorious for being callous towards everyone he met, even if they were the people he was protecting at the moment. That attitude was what initially drove Midoriya away from the Fire Quirk user. Midoriya always loved All Might because he reassured people. He made them feel safe even when disaster was happening around him. 𝗫𝗏, however, scared a lot of people, including his fans. Despite that, the man was respected by everyone, Midoriya included, for the sheer effort he put into his job. But now that Midoriya knew the truth, he felt only disgust for the man, a corruption of the idea of heroes, and one of the very things he hoped to change about this world. But what really made Midoriya mad was Shoto Todoroki himself. He sympathized with his classmate, he really did. But the way he was handling his trauma was just stupid and worse, harmful. He was holding himself back out of pure spite, disrespecting everyone else and potentially endangering everyone else. As someone who spent years preparing to attend UA even before he had a quirk, he felt personally insulted by Todoroki's self-imposed handicap, so he knew what he had to do to stop it. Unfortunately, he could not linger on these thoughts as he made it to his table. Despite that, his angry expression stayed on his face, even as he dug into his catsuit. Tsuburaya walked down the hallways of the stadium. He had excused himself, claiming to need the restroom, but he had a different purpose in mind. Midoriya's message had caused him great concern. The boy was someone who took All Might's words to heart, but such naive idealism was likely to get him in trouble with 𝗫𝗏, or worse, if the media found out about this whole affair. Still, he was compelled to help his successor, so he decided the best place to start was to meet with All Might. The man would be a good place to start, seeing as he had worked with 𝗫𝗏 a lot. In addition, the AI wanted to remind the man of his promise. Unfortunately, that meetup would have to wait, since instead he encountered the very man he was meant to investigate. 𝗫𝗏. Tsuburaya nodded respectfully. An honor to meet the number 2 hero. 𝗫𝗏 glared, eyes narrowing. And you are Dr. Alfred Reinhardt Tsuburaya, of wondrous might and heroism, he calmly supplied. After only a moment, the pro-hero scowled. Although worried, Tsuburaya did little more than raise an inquisitive eyebrow. I take it that you know of me. He provided the Midoriya boy with his technology. 𝗫𝗏 did not sound as though he was impressed. I did, Tsuburaya confirmed, as well as plenty of other pro-heroes, such as Razorshell's shield, Bounce's inertia maintainer suit, and I know who you make them for. 𝗫𝗏 interrupted. Your reputation is well known, as are the questions around you and your company. Tsuburaya blinked, but visibly remained calm. Your company appeared 5 years ago, but almost nothing is known about it. 𝗫𝗏 continued. You have only the bare minimum of documentation in your government records. No credit card information. No listed schools you've attended. No mention of where you graduated from. No listed housing. No known family. Not so much as a favorite place to eat. All of it is highly suspicious. I prefer my private life to remain so. And if you must know, I was an orphan. Tsuburaya responded in a clipped tone. I have no family anymore. That doesn't explain how you started that support company. 𝗫𝗏 continued. There are almost no employees on record, aside from one Mayhatsum, Izuku Midoriya and yourself. Your financial records only show a list of current investors, all of them clean and not connected to anything nefarious, sure. However, there is nothing about where the money came from to start it up in the first place. A cash fund left behind by deceased loved ones. Tsuburaya smoothly responded. He had prepared for this exact scenario enough to have responses ready for almost any question posed. With wise investments, I was able to start up the support company, utilizing some designs entrusted to me by some old friends before their passing. Ah yes, a lot of tech that shows capabilities on par with Stark and Oscorp creations. What's more, the Midoriya boy's technology is very similar to the original Mysterio's, even down to the designs. Are you actually accusing me of anything or merely trying to waste my time? Tsuburaya interrupted, eyes narrowing behind his glasses. 𝗫𝗏 glared at the android before he responded. No, but you and your company have far too many mysteries surrounding it. 𝗫𝐬 loomed over the man, his gaze almost as intense as his flames. To 𝗬𝗲's credit, he did not back away, instead holding his ground despite barely reaching the man's neck. "You've taken the Mysterio boy under your wing. His technological prowess is impressive, but Shoto will overcome him with his quirk's power." 𝗫𝐬 turned away, his massive form going down a flight of stairs. "Count on it." 𝗬𝗲 watched the fire quirk user leave, his mechanical brain running through the scenario, analyzing everything that he could think of about their confrontation. 𝗫𝐬 was investigating wondrous might and heroism, and 𝗬𝗲 himself. The man did not appear to have any solid evidence of wrongdoing on 𝗬𝗲's part. The well-placed bribes and black market forgeries of IDs had done their jobs, creating enough of a paper trail that 𝗫𝐬 was unable to figure out the truth of 𝗬𝗲's origins. Still, the man was determined, and if he got a chance to investigate the 𝐸's affairs, well, that would create unnecessary attention that could threaten Midoriya's future. Therefore, the AI could only come to one conclusion. It looked as though he would need to look into 𝗫𝐬's life, after all. Taking a sip of his soda, Present Mike did what he did best, and began hyping up the audience. "Welcome back, spectators. I hope you've enjoyed the chaos in our games, because now we're going to see what the final event is going to be. And this year we have, sparring in the shifting arena. Always a classic. The way it works is simple." Aizawa spoke up, sounding as bored and disinterested as ever. "The arena will have several rows of pillars moving up and down along the edges, controlled by cementos. They can be broken off to be utilized as weapons, or used as barriers if the student so chooses. The students have 10 minutes to either defeat their opponent, immobilize them, or make them yield. No hitting below the belt. All support items have been approved for all students to use in this matchup. Recovery Girl and 𝗵𝘃𝐸 will be on standby in case anyone needs medical attention, but try not to go overboard. So let's see who will be beating the snot out of each other." The screen showed the 4 hero teams, plus 𝗵𝘃𝐸, Dark Shadow and Monoma, before scrambling them up. After 5 seconds of randomization, the matchups were shown. 𝐻𝐴NTA vs Penny Parker, Mayflower Izuku Midoriya vs Hitoshi Shinso Ochako Uraraka vs Nito Monoma Ponitsuno Tori vs Katsuki Bakugo 𝗵𝘃𝐸 Takoyami, Dark Shadow vs Ijiro Kirishima Shoto Todoroki vs Denki Kaminari Momo Yayarazu vs Mina Ashido Tenya Ida vs Mei Hatsune. But before we get to some government-sanctioned kid-on-kid violence, we've got something special for the people who didn't make it to round 3. A half hour of side games and events for you to show off what you're capable of, yeah. If anyone who made it into the 3rd round wishes to join in, they're free to. However, I would advise that they do not, so that they may remain rested for the sparring matches. So, we'll be facing each other, huh? Midoriya glanced over, Shinso approaching with a smirk. "I hope there's no hard feelings when I beat you." Before Midoriya could respond, a thick tail wrapped over his mouth, courtesy of his classmate, Anjiro. "Don't respond. Come with me," he whispered to the boy, who could only nod. Shinso looked disappointed, but shrugged and left. "Hey, Purple." Shinso stopped, looking behind himself. It was that pink-haired girl from the support course with the shape-shifting octopus arms, carrying a duffel bag over one shoulder. "What is it?" The girl stopped, and immediately began speaking 100 words a second. "Oh, well, I noticed that you didn't really go outside of the castle all that much in the last match, so I was wondering if you had a combat-capable quirk. But if not, I thought that I could offer you some of my babies." Taken aback by her odd choice of wording, Shinso could only say, "Your what?" "My babies," the girl repeated, holding up the duffel bag, now open and revealed to be full of support items. "All from wondrous might and heroism. I figure that I can help you show off my stuff for the support companies to get investments, and at the same time, help you progress in the games. Except you were working with the Mysterio kid in the last game, and there's a good chance we'll be facing each other at some point. For all I know, your devices could be made to sabotage my performance," Shinso tiredly pointed out. "What? But that would mean that not only am I untrustworthy, but that my babies would be unreliable." The girl protested. "Come on, just try one." "No," he said, turning away. Unfortunately, she followed behind him, pulling out numerous support items and gadgets. Pulling out a pair of green boots, she continued her sales pitch. "How about these electromagnetic coil boots? They'll let you jump high and kick harder." "No thank you," Shinso said, going down another hallway. "No, what about these web shooters, modeled after the ones used by Peter Parker?" the girl asked, pulling out a pair of devices resembling Fitbits. Though he was admittedly interested in those, Shinso turned away. "No, I don't want anything from you." "Oh, but you haven't seen everything I've got, though." The annoyance ran in front of him, pulling out a belt buckle. "What about this instant armor belt? It shoots out bands of metal that wrap around you, and are capable of stopping anything below a .50 caliber bullet." "No," Shinso repeated, getting frustrated. "I've also got these awesome pulse gloves." The annoyance pulled out a pair of gauntlets. "They'll send out a blast of energy that'll actually... There is something you can do." 𝗀𝐻 interrupted. Really? What you may began, before her form went slack, eyes out of focus. Go back to where you came from, 𝗀𝐻 said. Silently, the girl turned around and left him alone at last. 𝗀𝐻 sighed. He knew it was rude, but that girl was just too overwhelming. And he already had issues just talking to people. Honestly, it was like that girl was trying to provoke him. And here we are with the first matchup of our final event. In this corner, we have the tape slinger, the trap master who's elbowed his way into round 3. He's ensnared all his obstacles with the stickiest ropes since the Spider-Man's webs. Introducing 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 of the Hero Courses Class 1A. 𝗀𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 stepped out, nervous but confident. He heard cheers, mostly from Class 1A, who was sitting in a private booth to watch the matchup. Above the arena he could spot several drones with cameras, broadcasting to the Jumbotron and streaming services displaying the sports festival. The idea was intimidating, but he knew that he could do it. And facing him, the latest in a long line of spider people, the queen of creepy crawlies and circuitry, and her hyper-intelligent arachnid classmate, Penny and Mayflower Parker of the Support Courses Class 1H. Stepping over was Penny and her spider, the two climbing into their mini-mecha while the crowd cheered. Is that match even allowed? Zero called to Midnight, who only laughed. It is. Parker and Mayflower filled out the appropriate paperwork. Midnight confirmed, raising her whip. Fighters, take your positions. Zero stepped onto the field while the duo, now piloting the match, did the same. After crossing the edge, all around the field, encircling the 3 fighters were thick pillars of cement in 4 rows. Every other pillar would rise up to about 5 meters before sinking back down, while the others rose up, and the cycle would repeat in a coordinated fashion. It was an oddly hypnotic effect, but Zero wouldn't let himself be distracted. And fight. The match ran forward, deceptively fast, like one of those American football players. But Zero dodged, shooting out a strand of tape towards a pillar with a thwip, pulling himself away. The match stopped short of crashing through a pillar, a cannon popping out of the shoulder to open fire at Zero. Pew, pew, pew. The tape-dispensing boy dodged, using his strands to move quickly between the pillars. Well dang, it looks like Zero's taking a page out of Spider-Man's book. I'd have thought Penny would be the one to go with web swinging, but Tape Boy's moving fast between the pillars. Penny Parker's SPIDERWOMAN match grants her advantages that Zero does not have, namely higher defense and attack strength. Thus he's taken to relying on evasive maneuvers. Aizawa calmly explained. He's right, I can't damage that suit, but maybe I can restrain it long enough to send it out. Moving fast, Zero spun around and shot several quick strands of tape at the match suit, aiming for the face of the machine. With several direct hits, he launched himself forward, ready to knock it down, only for the machine to reach up and grab his leg, the tape sliding off its face uselessly. What? The match spun Zero, throwing him up and out of the arena. He was saved from a painful impact with the ground by the match firing an orb that expanded into a webnet, catching him. 𝗀𝐻𝐢𝐬 is out of bounds. Penny and Mayflower Parker progressed to the next round. Midnight shouted, the crowd cheering, though some people were disappointed at the short fight. The concrete pillars sank back into the ground while the match approached, Penny emerging. Too bad for you. My match has got lubricant dispensers to keep unwanted adhesives from sticking. Plus, we had radar to act as spider sense. Still, you did pretty well. Penny complimented. After a moment, Penny added, Mayflower says you'd make a pretty good spider one day. The match extended a hand to the tape dispenser boy. Zero smiled humbly and accepted the hand, climbing out of the web net. Such respectful combatants. Present Mike cheered, the audience following suit. In Class 1A's box, the crowd, sans Midoriya since he was in the locker room, welcomed Zero back with open arms and pats on the back. You did amazing for your first matchup, Zero-kun. 𝐴ter rushed over, arm chopping even as he praised his classmate. Thanks, but I lost so quickly, Zero lamented. You took on a spider, bro. You proved how manly you were. Kirishima cheered. Oh, like it was anything special. The class turned to Monoma, who was peering over the wall of the spectator box from his class's own with a smug smirk. I guess your reputation as an almighty, unbeatable team was bestowed prematurely. Most of them questioned. Monoma just laughed. One of the vaunted members of the oh-so-praised Class 1A was beaten by a girl in the support course, 2 years his minor no less. I'm certain this comes as a shocking revelation for such a delusional group, but it's an indicator of the harsh reality you've found yourself in. What are you talking about? Momo asked, more confused than anything else. Oh, unable to grasp what's so clear. Monoma sneered at the heiress. Your class is nothing but a one-hit wonder. Monoma continued, cackling evilly. You'll be knocked down from that pedestal you've placed yourself on, leaving it to be open for the taking by the superior Class 1 thwip. Monoma would have continued had a small strand of tape not launched itself onto his mouth, temporarily gagging him. 4000. Thanks, Zero. That guy gives me a headache, Kaminari muttered. Don't mention it, Zero said with a smile, taking his seat. Monomer ripped off the tape with a yelp, but present Mike speaking up kept him from going on a tangent. Will Midoriya and 𝗀𝐻 please make their way to the field? Miss Uraraka and Monoma, make your way to the waiting rooms. Glaring at the students with a smug smirk, Monoma slinked away, muttering about how he'd take the spotlight stealers down. 𝗀𝐻, what a delusional nut, Bakugo muttered, otherwise ignoring the interactions. How's that for irony? Ochako thought to herself as she made her way out of the booth. Next up, we've got two students who can mess with you in ways you'd never expect. In one corner, we've got the gremlin of the games, the faux villain that's been making the events into his personal playground. We have Izuku Midoriya of Class 1A. The crowd was unsurprisingly subdued, only a few hundred cheering, while the rest only clapped politely or flat out booed. A few even tried throwing trash at the boy, only for it to bounce off an energy field, though it quickly stopped when people heard music playing through the speakers. Despite this, Midoriya ignored them all. Oh, looks like we're getting some entry music. I can dig it. Present Mike cheered as Midoriya entered the ring. In the opposing ring, this is the dark horse that made it further than anyone, all the while sporting eye bags that rival my co-hosts. Give it up for Hitoshi Shinso of Class 1C of the General Education course. The boy stepped out onto the field, to several cheers and cries of kick his ass, while the drones played a cover of an old song. The purple-haired boy walked onto the field, his expression neutral, though for a moment he had a brief flash of panic when he heard the song play, though it quickly gave way to a steely determination. Midoriya stepped onto the arena, the pillars rising and falling behind him. With a shout of fight, Midoriya ran forward, crackling with green lightning. What? No holograms or robots? Shinso asked, dodging the punches by the boy. Midoriya frowned, but didn't speak. I thought you were the master of illusions. Or was that the real illusion? Midoriya went for an uppercut, but Shinso sidestepped it with ease. Well, you're certainly a terrible fist fighter. Maybe you should have gone into kids' parties instead. Midoriya grew visibly frustrated, but he remained silent. Internally hating himself, Shinso decided to pull out the big guns. But then, I guess with a reputation as a villain, you wouldn't be much of a success anyways. Midoriya growled, but said nothing. Then again, that's probably why you're hanging out with those other students. Midoriya's eyes widened, and Shinso saw his opening, and went all in. An idiot with electric powers, a mad scientist with robot tentacles, a girl with a wingsuit. It sounds to me like you're trying to make a new Sinister Six. They must be really pathetic to want to work with you. You don't know, Midoriya finally shouted, only to fall slack, his expression going blank. Oh no, looks like Midoriya's fallen victim to Shinso's quirk. Present Mike helpfully supplied. Unless it's a trick. Remember, Midoriya is an illusionist and skilled at acting. Aizawa tiredly reminded him. Shinso ignored the commentary. Midoriya looked just like anyone else who had fallen under his quirk's control, blank eyes and all. Although, while Shinso visibly smirked, internally he felt guilty for having to use such awful accusations, since he himself had been on the receiving end of them. But he could apologize later. Right now, he had to advance to the next round. Turn around and step out of the arena. Watch out for the pillars. Wordlessly, the green-haired boy turned around and walked towards the edge. Seeing the green-haired boy move to the edge, Shinso allowed himself to relax. Victory was assured.